Chapter 127. Above the river, the moonlight was thousands of miles away, and it was cold enough to penetrate one's clothes. White light leaked through the gaps between the branches, like snow that had not yet melted. Yen turned her head and looked at the person opposite her. The young man's eyes were like autumn water, moving even without adding color. His side profile was angular, heroic, and lazy. The faint smile on his lips instantly made her return to that night in the mountain temple. It was you. Her mind was a little muddled, and she was at a loss. In the end, she did not know who the other party was. She only remembered that she was sent to a room in the mountain temple, and a woman with a gentle voice took care of her, cleaned her up, and sent her back to Sujiheng. Sujiheng asked her what was going on, and Yen only said that she wanted to go out for a walk and accidentally lost her way. He did not say much. As for the woman who sent her back, Sujiheng did not mention her again. Therefore, she did not know who the strange man she met was. But the other party said, "If you really want to be strong, so what if you are blind? Even if you are blind, you can be the most different among the blind." She always remembered it in her mind, and she did not forget a single word. Later, she tried to distinguish shapes by listening to sounds, and she could live without her eyes. This process was very difficult, but every time she wanted to give up, she would think of the moon behind the Tianshan temple. The moon was very beautiful, and it would be a pity to give up like this. It was not that she did not think about everything that happened that day, but when she calmed down and thought about it, some things were not necessarily unintentional. How could she coincidentally hear the conversation between the maids at the door? How could no one in the Su family have noticed a person stumbling into the mountains? When she was sent back, Su Zhiheng easily believed her words and did not pursue the matter. He just wanted her to be free. She was not a snow-white kitten raised in the courtyard of a rich family, and she was not held in the arms of a madam or a young miss. She would be happy after being teased with a ball of thread, and she was docile and weak. She was a wild cat that came out of an alley at night, dirty and tenacious. Even if she was blind, she could sit on the wall and hunt. They wanted her to die, but she did not want to die. After all, in this world, someone had given her a piece of candy and taught her how to taste the sweetness of the world. Yen had always thought that the strange passerby that night might be a kind-hearted young master or a very patient young master, but he didn't expect it to be Xiao Ju. How could it be him? She asked softly, "Granny Su, what kind of person is she?" Xiao Ju smiled and lazily said, "A very fierce, crybaby, bad-tempered woman." Yen also smiled, but his eyes were a little wet. She said, "Does young Mistress Su know that you're talking about her behind her back?" She had saved the worst side of herself for that night with Xiao Ju. And the most gentle side of Xiao Ju's life was probably reserved for her that night. Yen did not know that his stay at that time had become the only salvation for the desperate Yen. The moon was lonely and cold, hanging in the sky, but no one knew that he had once shone the moonlight so gently on a person. "She won't have the chance to know," Xiao Ju said calmly. "Because young Mistress Su was dead. Maybe she knows." Yen lowered his head and smiled. Suddenly, he looked at the sky and sighed, "The moon is so beautiful." Xiao Ju supported herself with her hands and looked up, but did not look at him. "Didn't you say that you wanted to drink with Chu Xilan? Didn't you bring wine?" Yen said loudly, "A cup of wine for the mountains, rivers, lakes, and seas." She held her hands in the air, and the moonlight fell into her hands, as if it was a cup full. She raised her hands to the sky and said, "To the moon." The young man looked on coldly and sneered, "Crazy." The girl turned around and solemnly raised the cup in her hand to him. "Here's to you too." Yen's eyes were no longer tired and gloomy. At this moment, his eyes were bright, and his smile was bright. There was even a trace of gratitude in his eyes. Gratitude? He raised his eyebrows and snorted, but did not respond to her silly gesture. Flattery. Yen looked into Xiao Ju's eyes and said quietly in his heart, "Really, thank you very much." That night, He Yan and Xiao Ju sat together until very late. In the end, because it was too cold on the mountain, she and Xiao Ju went down the mountain. When they got back, it was already midnight. The next day, they woke up later. After lunch, they wanted to find Chu Xiao to talk about what happened last night, but when they arrived, they found that he had already left. Are you looking for Chu Xilan? Lin Shuanghe passed by and said, this morning, Chu Xilan returned to the capital with the people from Shuajing. This morning? He Yan was stunned. He didn't tell me it was this morning. They came in a hurry. Lin Shuanghe opened his fan and waved it. Brother He, meeting and parting is fate. He will return to Shuajing sooner or later. You don't have to be too forceful. He Yan was confused. What was she being too forceful about? She just felt that it was a pity that she didn't even say goodbye to Chu Zhao before leaving. After all, fourth young master Chu had been in Liangzhou with her every day to sort out the relationship between the officials in Shuajing. But since he had already left, there was no point in talking about this. Not long after Chu Zhao left, Song Taotao and Qing Lisu also left for Shuajing. Xiao Ju arranged for them to be escorted back to the capital. Before the little girl left, she pulled on He Yan's clothes with tears in her eyes. Brother He, you must come back to see me. See you for what? You're a girl. My big brother is a man. How can he come to see you? Qing Lisu pulled her away and replaced her with herself. She laughed and said to He Yan, big brother, look at me. Come to our residence as a guest. I'll treat you to all the restaurants in Shuajing. Song Taotao, Qing Lisu. I know. When we get back, we'll cancel the engagement. Qing Lisu picked her ear and muttered, bitch, only a ghost would want to marry you. With the two children playing around, it seemed like they wouldn't be lonely on the road. He Yan sent them to the carriage. For a moment, he felt a bit disappointed. Usually, he felt that they were naughty and noisy. But when it was time to leave, he felt very reluctant. When she was Hirufei, because of her identity, she couldn't get too close to her brothers and sisters in the residence. Qing Lisu and Song Taotao were like siblings in an ordinary family, just like He Yunsheng. In a way, they made up for the fantasy she had about her family. Wang Ba and Jiang Jiao walked over. Jiang Jiao said, Brother He. After the misunderstanding was cleared, Jiang Jiao finally believed that He Yan didn't steal his wife. His attitude slightly improved. He said, my family sent some things over. I picked some food and necessities. You can go get them for me later. Wang Ba said sourly, the young master of the martial arts school is so good. He's already here to join the army, but people still send him things. Aren't you the leader of the mountain bandits? He Yan asked curiously, why didn't your subordinates send you anything? No money. Poor. Can't the bandits' nest be disbanded? Wang Ba became angry. Why are you asking me? You didn't receive anything either. I'm just asking. Don't get angry. He Yan thought, how could she be the same as Wang Ba? She was now living in anonymity. If the He family still sent her things, did they want her to die faster? Or was it because the government couldn't write a warrant for her arrest? But, Brother Jiang, why did your family suddenly send you things? He Yan asked. Jiang Jiao said helplessly, Brother He, did you forget that it's going to be the new year soon? The new year? He Yan was startled. She had been living too comfortably these days. She actually almost forgot that it was going to be the new year in a few days. The new year was coming. It belonged to He Yan. The new year. She suddenly became happy. Jiang Jiao and Wang Ba were both startled. Wang Ba asked suspiciously, why are you so happy? Did military governor Xiao give you something good behind our backs again? He Yan answered seriously, that's right. Good wine, good food, good future. Are you envious? Are you jealous? After she finished speaking, she turned around and left. Wang Ba was stunned for a moment. He chased after her and said, "Hey, tell me clearly. What did he give you? Don't run." The Liang province guards had a pretty good New Year. Xiao Ju, as the commander, treated all the new recruits equally. Regardless of whether it was the southern prefecture soldiers or the Liang province guards, they all had a full New Year's Eve dinner. There were dishes, meat, and good wine. It was very lively. The joy even diluted the bitter cold at the border. But this New Year's passed, and training continued. After the end of the year, He Yan's injuries were almost healed. She also trained with them. Even though she wanted to enter the 9 Flags Battalion, the amount of daily training for the southern prefecture soldiers wasn't something He Yan, who had just recovered from a serious illness, could afford. As such, she could only suffer alongside the Liang province guards. The days passed peacefully until one day, Fei Nu received a letter from Lu County. In the room, Fei Nu was talking to Xiao Ju. "Young master," Wanning said that if the commander-in-chief is looking for a suitable person to travel with, it would be best to set off in the next few days. Jiang is not close to Liang province. If we set off now, it would be spring by the time we arrive. We should be able to make it in time for Princess Mengji's birthday. Chai Anqi might appear on that day. Xiao Ju looked up. Qiao Huanqing. This child is the nephew of Princess Jiang's general, Cui Yuji, Fei Nu said. When he was young, he was taken away by the Cui family's enemies. Later, he was luckily rescued. He was stranded in the Central Plains and was adopted by a rich merchant. The rich merchant had no children, so Qiao Huanqing inherited his wealth. He married his wife last year, but for some reason, Cui Yuji found her whereabouts. Cui Yuji has no other family members, so he wrote a letter to invite him to attend Princess Mengji's birthday banquet. However, Qiao Huanqing is very timid. Before he reached Jiang, he was robbed by bandits when he passed by Lu County. He was slightly injured. He also heard that there were many bad people on the road to Jiang, so he refused to go forward. Xiao Ju's eyes moved slightly. She smiled but did not say anything. Needless to say, the bad people were definitely Wan Ying's doing. However, after scaring Qiao Huanqing, this person did not dare to go to Jiang. Wasn't he too cowardly? The person sent by Wanning agreed with Cui Yuji that he would replace Qiao Huanqing to attend the banquet in Jiang. However, Qiao Huanqing would have to pay 1,000 taels of gold as a reward. Qiao Huanqing had been separated from his family for many years. Cui Yuji had not seen this nephew of his for more than 10 years, so no one knows what Qiao Huanqing looks like now. This person's identity is suitable, and the time is suitable. Wanning also sent a pass and a jade tablet to prove his identity. "Young master, there shouldn't be any problems." A nephew who had been separated from the vassal king's trusted aide for many years. This identity could be said to be very convenient, but you make it sound so easy, Chi Wu could not help but say, but Wanning already said that Cui Yuji invited Qiao Huanqing and his wife, as well as his newly married wife. It's not a big deal to be a governor, but where can we find a woman to pretend to be his wife? We can't say that the madam disappeared halfway. Fei Nu's face was wooden, but he also knew that Chi Wu's words made sense. The Southern Prefecture Army and the 9 Banners Battalion did not lack men. Whenever there was a need for people, there were people who were agile, smart, handsome, and strange. There were all kinds of people, but there were no women. Wanning was the only woman, but Wanning, her son was already 12 years old. How could she be Qiao Huanqing's wife? Xiao Ju frowned. For the first time, his handsome face showed some embarrassment. You can find a death warrior with high martial arts. Fei Nu reminded. How can that be? Chi Wu refused without thinking, we haven't known each other for a long time. Who knows if they are good or bad? If they secretly harm young master, can you and I bear the responsibility? Chi Wu spoke without thinking. Fei Nu had nothing to say, so he only said, then do you have someone in mind? Me? Qi Wu thought hard and said solemnly, let's not talk about the Southern Prefecture Army. Even in our Shao mansion, we don't know many girls who know martial arts. When the madam was still alive, she didn't like master to play with swords and sticks. Even the maids we took in only knew how to write poems and flowers and tend to the flowers and plants. I haven't seen many girls like this. Find a girl. Someone outside the window unhurriedly waved a folding fan and elegantly said, I know this. Why don't you ask these two uncouth men instead of me? Xiao Huijin, aren't you recklessly wasting God's gift? Have they seen a girl before? Why don't you ask me such a difficult question? This young master will answer your question. Xiao Ju glanced at him and said indifferently, who let him in? Qi Wu, it wasn't me. Fei Nu, it wasn't me. Do you still need to let him in? Lin Shuanghe felt very good about himself. Everyone in the Liang province guard knows that you and I have been close friends for many years. I'm also the white-robed divine hand who can bring people back to life. Of course they respect me. I can go anywhere in the Liang province guard unimpeded. Throw him out. Fei Nu, Xiao Huijin, what kind of dog temper is this? Lin Shuanghe said as he walked in through the door. He waved his hand, indicating that Fei Nu and Qi Wu should leave. Let me solve your young master's difficult illness. Fei Nu and Qi Wu left. Lin Shuanghe closed the door and windows. Xiao Ju coldly watched his actions. Lin Shuanghe sat down on the chair in front of him and asked, looking for a girl? Xiao Ju kicked him. Lin Shuanghe jumped up, if you want to talk, then talk. Don't keep hitting me. I didn't eavesdrop on your conversation just now. I only heard half of it. What do you mean a girl with good skills? Why are you looking for a girl with good skills? A female guard? Xiao Ju stared at him and suddenly laughed. He lazily curled his lips and said unhurriedly, looking for a wife. Lin Shuanghe, ? After a while, he suddenly came back to his senses and realized what Xiao Ju meant. You're going to get married? That can't be. That's not right. You're always talking about blind marriages and mute marriages. If you're going to get married, you should find a wife yourself. Why are you asking Fei Nu and the others to find one for you as if you're picking vegetables? Xiao Huijin, are you talking nonsense? Xiao Ju, did I say that you're looking for a wife for me? Lin Shuanghe, you're looking for someone else. You don't even know where you are. Xiao Ju said impatiently, it's fake. Don't you know how to act? What? Lin Shuanghe stared blankly for a moment before slowly coming back to his senses. He stared at Xiao Ju for a while, until Xiao Ju revealed a displeased expression. Only then did he move closer and say, are you going to do something like last time when you went to the Liang province guard to deal with Sun Xiangfu? Find someone to pretend to be your wife and do something. Lin Shuanghe finally got the truth out of Song Taotao's mouth. The little girl was no match for this kind of person. In just a few sentences, Lin Shuanghe knew what was going on. You're not that stupid. Then isn't there someone in front of you? Lin Shuanghe said without thinking, of course you're looking for my little sister He. Have you forgotten that my little sister He is also a girl? And she's quite skilled. She's brave and smart, not pretentious, and very cute. If she can pretend to be your nephew, then of course she can pretend to be your wife. Xiao Ju, no. Why not? Lin Shuanghe was dissatisfied, she can call you father. Is it wrong for you to call her wife? Xiao Ju took a sip of tea and looked at him indifferently. Did you accept He Yan's money to speak for her? I'm so rich, why would I accept money from others? But you, Lin Shuanghe leaned closer, why are you so resistant? Xiao Huijin, Xiao Huijin, have you forgotten that you found a fake wife? At this time, don't be picky about your real wife. Or. He stood up straight and waved his fan. Using a mysterious tone, he said, are you afraid that you'll fall in love with her? Cough, cough, cough. Xiao Zhu choked. He said expressionlessly, you can leave now. Then I'll leave, Lin Shuanghe said, don't blame me for not reminding you. He Yan is the best candidate you can think of. Although I don't know what you're going to do, but whatever you do, it will be very dangerous. Normal girls won't be able to handle this kind of dangerous situation.
You don't trust those who can handle it. He Yan has fought side by side with you a few times. You know her quite well. In terms of loyalty. His gaze fell on Xiao Zhu. He seemed to be pondering, are you going to take Shenmuxue with you? I think she would be very happy to go with you. However, I'm afraid that if Lord Shen finds out, he won't be able to resist rushing to Liangzhou to chop off your legs. I've seen more girls than you've trained soldiers. I think little sister he doesn't like you now. A girl who doesn't like you and you pretend to be husband and wife is the least likely to cause trouble. If you change Shenmuxue, then something big will happen. Most importantly, little sister he always dresses as a man. Other than you, no one knows what she looks like. It's like a person who fell from the sky. If she's really exposed, it'll be easier to hide her identity. Xiao Zhu calmly looked at the teacup in her hand. She didn't know if Lin Shuanghe had heard or not. A girl's thoughts are the most difficult to guess. A girl like little sister he who is simple and straightforward, with everything written on her face, or who says it directly, is suitable for this job. You might as well say that she's an idiot. Lin Shuanghe choked and said angrily, I've said all that needs to be said. I only said this because we're brothers. Think about it carefully. Think about it carefully before you choose someone. After he finished speaking, he grabbed his fan and left. After he left, Xiao Zhu put the teacup back on the table and sighed lightly. It was late at night. He Yan washed up and sat in front of the mirror. He ate too well during the new year in the army. He looked at himself in the mirror and felt that he seemed to have become slightly chubbier. Fortunately, lately he was born slender and weak. Now that he was slightly chubbier, he didn't look too plump. Instead, he looked a little less skinny and more delicate. He looked like a young lady who was raised by a wealthy family. It was just that this kind of coquettish behavior was really inappropriate in the military camp. He Yan waved his fist at his reflection in the mirror and made a fierce expression. He felt that he still looked imposing and was relieved. He walked to the bed and climbed onto it. The bed was as cold as ice. There wasn't enough charcoal in the army camp. Although the weather was slightly warmer after the new year, it was still a little cold at night. He had to use his body to warm up the mattress under him. Just as he felt a little warm, he suddenly heard someone knocking on the door. He Yan was stunned for a moment. He cursed in his heart. Who was it? It was the middle of the night. It wasn't easy to warm up the bed, but now that he went out, it was cold again. The knocking continued. He Yan couldn't pretend that he didn't hear it even if he wanted to. He could only put on his outer garment and open the door. When he opened the door, Lin Shuanghe was standing outside.
This person was seriously wearing a thin white shirt on such a cold day. Even if he added cotton, it wouldn't be very thick. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to look so elegant. He was even fanning himself. He Yan couldn't help but grab his fan. Dr. Lin, can you stop fanning yourself? It's really cold. Lin Shuanghe stopped and smiled, okay. Why are you looking for me so late at night? Lin Shuanghe, brother He, let's talk inside. I don't have a problem, He Yan replied, but brother Lin, didn't you say that a man and a woman alone? Before she could finish speaking, the young man walked past her and went inside. He stomped his feet and said, it's so cold. He Yan. She closed the door and turned around. Lin Shuanghe was still nagging, why didn't you light a charcoal brazier in your room? It's too cold. I ran out of charcoal, He Yan said patiently, since it's so cold, can Dr. Lin just tell me what's the matter? I've thought about it. There's something I must tell you, the sound of knocking interrupted his words. The two of them looked at the door in the middle of the room. The knocking sound was coming from inside. He Yan was stunned. Knocking on the middle door meant that it was Xiaoju. What did Xiaoju mean by knocking on the door in the middle of the night? She looked at Lin Shuanghe. Lin Shuanghe also had a suspicious look on his face. He Yan walked over, hesitated for a moment, and unlocked the door. Second young Master Zhao's expression was calm and elegant. His gaze swept past Lin Shuanghe for a moment and quickly returned to He Yan. He Yan didn't know if it was an illusion, but she felt that second young Master Zhao's expression was a little strange. Commander-in-Chief. What's the matter? Lady He. He took a step forward and bent down slightly, looking straight at her. The young man had a handsome face. His eyes were like autumn water, full of moonlight. At such a close distance, she could clearly see his long and slightly curled eyelashes. His voice was low and magnetic, making her heart beat faster. Do you like me? Chapter 128. Do you like me? His voice seemed to have the ability to hook one's soul, causing He Yan to be rooted to the ground, unable to move at all. He couldn't help but gulp. Xiaoju frowned slightly. He Yan. He Yan subconsciously curled her fingers and dug her fingertips into her palms. She didn't feel it when this person was lazy, but when he got close, even his aura became extremely dangerous. He raised his eyebrows, curled his lips, and asked again, almost bewitchingly, do you like me? No. I don't like you. He Yan subconsciously curled her fingers and dug her fingertips into her palms. The pain cleared her mind for a moment, so that she wouldn't say something shocking. She looked at Lin Shuanghe, who was standing at the side, and was also stunned. Hearing this, Xiaoju didn't get angry. Instead, she seemed to be slightly relieved. She stood up straight and raised her eyebrows. Very good, it's you. Me? The ambiguous atmosphere just now was swept away. He Yan took a step back and couldn't help but look at him. What do you mean by me? Madam Qiao. Madam Qiao. He Yan was confused. Lin Shuanghe seemed to have suddenly understood. He walked over and said, you're finally willing to listen to me. You think that my sister He is the best choice, right? He Yan was even more confused. It's a long story. Then take your time. He Yan went to get a stool for them. Xiaoju glanced at her, turned her head, and reminded her. Put on your clothes first. He Yan looked down. When Lin Shuanghe knocked on the door, she casually put on her clothes and didn't put them on properly. Now that she was bending over to get a stool, her clothes slipped off her shoulders. Lin Shuanghe said, I didn't see anything. He Yan felt that Xiaoju was making a mountain out of a molehill. It wasn't like she wasn't wearing undergarments inside. What should be covered was tightly covered. Second young Master Xiao was too gentlemanly. But since he had already said it, she had to sort it out. After she was done, she listened to Xiaoju tell her the important parts of the story. He Yan slammed the table. Does Commander-in-Chief mean that you and I should disguise ourselves as husband and wife and set off for Jiang? This is ruining my reputation. If he pretended to be a nephew, he would have to call Xiaoju uncle. If he pretended to be a husband and wife, he would have to call Xiaoju husband. He Yan couldn't bear to look at the way he called Xiaoju hubby. Ruin your reputation. Xiaoju narrowed her beautiful eyes and sneered, you feel wronged. He Yan, that was true. In the eyes of others, Xiaoju's reputation would most likely be ruined if this matter were to spread out. But, wouldn't it be embarrassing for him to do whatever he wanted? It was rare that Xiaoju had a favor to ask of him. He Yan held his head high and was about to raise the price and extort him when he heard Xiaoju say casually, if you do this, you can join the Southern Mansion Army. He Yan, deal. Lin Shuanghe felt a headache coming on. Sister He, you are a girl. You should be more reserved. Then I'm afraid you have overestimated her. Xiao Zhu mocked, how could she have that kind of thing? Being reserved is not worth mentioning in this kind of situation. He Yan giggled and said, Commander-in-Chief, don't worry. I can definitely act as a good wife and win face for you. I'll let others envy you and praise you for the good fortune you've accumulated over several lifetimes. Xiao Zhu suppressed her anger and said calmly, Xiao Huanqing's wife is a famous talented woman in Dawei. He Yan's self-praise came to an abrupt end. Proficient in zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting, he glanced at He Yan with a bit of pity, obedient, sensible, and considerate. These 16 words, may I ask which one is related to you? Human-like, He Yan answered honestly. Pfft, Lin Shuanghe couldn't help but laugh. Halfway through, he felt that it was inappropriate and said, nonsense. Xiao Huaijin, you are talking nonsense again. How is sister He not obedient, sensible, and considerate? As for zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting. He looked at He Yan, do you know how to do it? He Yan, not really. Xiao Zhu sneered. Lin Shuanghe immediately said, that's okay, I know how to do it. Don't you have to wait for a few days before you set off with me? Before you set off, I promise that I will teach you. I don't dare to say that I will be very good at it, but I will definitely be able to deceive that group of uncouth people. Xiao Huaijin, leave sister He to me. In less than 5 days, I will give you a different kind of graceful woman. She is short, stupid, and has no talent. Then it will be hard on you, Xiao Zhu said casually. She stood up and walked to He Yan's side, staring straight at him. He Yan felt goosebumps from her stare. Xiao Zhu leaned closer, tilted his head, and smiled. But I can't say for sure. After all, Our Lady He is the best at deceiving people. He Yan, Xiao Zhu always made praises sound derogatory. My good wife will make others envious of me. I will. His gaze deepened and he smiled faintly. I will wait and see. He left. The door closed and the sound of the door being locked could be heard. He Yan heaved a sigh of relief and sat on the couch. Lin Shuanghe also stood up and smiled. It's getting late. I will leave first. Sister He, I will look for you tomorrow. Let's familiarize ourselves with the 4 arts. He Yan nodded. Lin Shuanghe wanted to say something but stopped. He Yan asked, Dr. Lin, is there anything else? He looked at He Yan with a complicated expression. Nothing. He waved his fan and left. After the door closed behind him, Lin Shuanghe sighed and pressed his chest. He had boasted to Xiao Zhu that He Yan didn't like Xiao Zhu and was most comfortable with her. This was true. After all, He Yan didn't sense a trace of affection for Xiao Zhu in their previous conversation. However, just now, when Xiao Zhu approached He Yan, Lin Shuanghe clearly saw He Yan's nervousness and helplessness. Something didn't seem right. It didn't seem like he was completely uninterested in Xiao Zhu. What was going on? Lin Shuanghe was burning with anxiety. If He Yan actually liked Xiao Zhu, wouldn't they get into trouble on this trip? No. It must be because Xiao Zhu was too beautiful. When the woman saw his face, she was instantly captivated by his beauty. She wouldn't feel anything after seeing him a few more times. He comforted himself. It must be so. He Yan sat on the couch in the room. Xiao Zhu actually asked him to pretend to be her husband and wife when they went to Jiang. This was unbelievable. Not to mention her, just the fact that Xiao Zhu was pretending to be someone else's wife would make people doubt their ears. Now that he knew the origin of the 9 Flags Battalion, He Yan didn't have much hope that he could really enter the 9 Flags Battalion. Those who could enter the 9 Flags Battalion were Xiao Zhu's brothers who had risked their lives to stand up for her. They were heroes who had risked their lives to stand up for her. This had to do with ability. Presumably, the 9 Flags Battalion wouldn't easily recruit people in the future. It was also good to be able to enter the Nan Mansion Army. In the way, the Nan Mansion army was well known for its fighting prowess. However, He Yan readily agreed to Xiao Ju's proposal. Even if these conditions didn't exist, she would still make concessions in the end. This was because the place Xiao Ju proposed was Jiang. He Yan's master was the passerby who saved her from the pile of corpses during the Battle of Mo County in her previous life. He was also a strange person who later taught her how to arrange troops, set up formations, and use swords, bows, and horses. His name was Lu Buwang. When they parted that year, she once asked Lu Buwang, "Master, if I want to find you one day, where should I go? We'll meet if fate wills it." Lu Buwang smiled and said, "But if you insist on finding me for something important, you can go outside Jiang City. I'll eventually arrive here." She remembered it in her heart. Now that He Rufei was dead, she accidentally received such a strange mission. But if she really went to Jiang, she might be able to see Lu Buwang. In her previous life, other than the He family, only Lu Buwang knew her identity. She really wanted to see her master. Jiang. He Yan sighed slightly. He actually began to hesitate in his heart. She didn't know if she could see him. She also didn't know if Lu Buwang could still deny her identity. She was very nervous. The next morning, He Yan woke up early and had breakfast. She wanted to go to the martial arts practice field for day training. As soon as she walked to the door, she was stopped by someone outside the courtyard. "Brother He." She turned around and saw Lin Shuanghe. He Yan asked, "Brother Lin, why are you here?" Judging from his appearance, he should have arrived long ago. Lin Shuanghe waved his fan and said, "I'll wait for you here." He looked up and down at He Yan's black clothes and asked, "Where are you going?" "Day training at the martial arts practice field. I haven't run yet in the morning." "Dr. Lin, I'll tell you later. If you don't go now, it'll be too late." "Hey." Lin Shuanghe stood in front of her and said, "If you're talking about day training, you don't have to go for the time being. I've asked Huijin to inform Chief Instructor Shen that you don't have to go for the next few days." He Yan asked, "Why? Did you forget that you'll be going to Jiang in a few days?" Lin Shuanghe smiled and said, "There are priorities. The martial arts practice field is right here. When you come back from Jiang, you can train however you want. However, you don't have much time left. Of course, you have to hurry up and do what's in front of you." He Yan was puzzled. "What's in front of me?" "Look." Lin Shuanghe pointed to He Yan. On the stone table in the courtyard, there was a zither, a chess set, a few pieces of paper, a brush, ink, and an inkstone. The Liangzhou Guard was a place for men to practice martial arts. When he suddenly saw these elegant things, for a moment, He Yan thought that Chu Zhao had returned. "Since you're going to act as Qiao Huanqing's wife, you have to know a little about zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting." When King Meng Ji was still alive, he admired literati very much. In Jiang City, the vassal king's territory, the people worshipped talented people. Coincidentally, Qiao Huanqing's wife, Wen Yuyan, was also a famous talented woman. "Brother He," Lin Shuanghe said, "you're very good looking, and your skills are also very reassuring. You can't make any mistakes in this area. Come, write something for me to see." He Yan was speechless. For a moment, He Yan felt that he was back in Shuojing's Xianchang Gymnasium. He and Lin Shuanghe, who was also in last place, were about to sit down and recite to each other. Lin Shuanghe didn't seem to realize that his words had brought back nightmares. He was still urging him, "Come, brother He, write something. Let me see how you're doing." This person had nothing to do all day. He Yan was too lazy to argue with him, so he immediately picked up the brush and wrote something. "Annoying." This word was written in a flamboyant and messy style. When Lin Shuanghe saw this, he stopped waving his fan. He was probably afraid that he would hurt He Yan, so he said in a gentler tone, "Brother He's writing is quite spirited, but it's a bit too spirited. Don't you think that, a woman's writing should be gentler? He Yen felt that there was a problem with his words, so he immediately asked, who said that a woman's writing should be gentler? According to what Dr. Lin said, men can't write hairpin-style small regular script? Yes, Lin Shuanghe said, but even if it's not gentler, it shouldn't be so sloppy. He Yen was speechless. Lin Shuanghe said, it's fine. Why don't you draw a picture? Just draw a picture of plum blossoms reflecting snow. It should be more than enough to fool those people from Jiang. He Yen spread out the paper and raised his hand to draw 3 flowers and a few dots of snow that looked like pockmarks. Lin Shuanghe looked at it and asked suspiciously, Brother He, are you drawing a fried sesame seed cake? Did you accidentally fry the sesame seeds? He Yen said. I only know how to draw maps. This happened one after another. Lin Shuanghe began to panic. He said, what about chess? Do you know how to play chess? My chess skills are very bad, and I like to regret my moves. I'm afraid that I can't play chess. Otherwise, I won't be able to control myself, and it won't be good if people see me as a joke. What about the zither? You're a zither master, right? Lin Shuanghe's eyes were filled with despair. Now, there are girls in the residence who have to start learning the zither from the age of 5. He Yen spread his hands. I don't know anything about musical instruments. The two of them looked at each other, and the atmosphere was awkward and silent. He Yen felt very uncomfortable and wronged. She had been raised as a boy since she was young, so she didn't learn the zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting. Later, she went to the Xianchang school, but she wasn't very good at learning. Even when a pie fell from the sky in the end and she received the guidance of a famous teacher and Lu Buwang, who taught her all his skills, it was all about surviving on the battlefield. The zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting could neither make her bleed less on the battlefield, nor help her win more battles in the battle. For her, it was too extravagant. She didn't have the conditions, and she didn't have the time. Of course, the most important thing was that she didn't have the talent. He Yen wasn't the only one who felt wronged. Lin Shuanghe also felt wronged. He had seen so many noble ladies in Shuajing, and each of them was good at least 3 kinds of talents. Everyone knew how to play the zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting, but He Yen couldn't even do it. Lin Shuanghe suddenly doubted himself. Was it wrong for him to suggest to Xiaoju that He Yen should play Wen Yuyan? Dr. Lin. He Yen saw that Lin Shuanghe hadn't said anything, and she was afraid that Lin Shuanghe was frightened by her lack of talent, so she asked with concern. Lin Shuanghe came to his senses and forced a smile. Nothing, I'm thinking about something. It was needless to say how exquisite it was when it was so bad. It could only be said that she had learned the most ordinary skills, and then she just needed to put on a show. There was a ready-made female teacher in the Yangzhou Guards, Shen Muxue, who was very talented. However, if Shen Muxue knew that He Yen was a woman and was asked by Xiaoju to play the role of husband and wife, he was afraid that something would go wrong. Although Lin Shuanghe didn't care about Shen Muxue, he didn't want to see any girl sad. Forget it, if he didn't go to hell, who would? Lin Shuanghe looked at He Yen. His heart was bleeding, but he gritted his teeth and smiled. Brother He, you don't need to panic. As long as you work hard, you can grind an iron pestle into a needle. If you have a will, you can achieve anything. Since you don't know how to do it, let me teach you. We'll learn from the beginning, and I'm sure we'll be able to impress others. He Yen saw that this person was inexplicably excited, so she coughed lightly. That. Dr. Lin, do you know how to do it? If she remembered correctly, Lin Shuanghe was ranked last with her in the past. What qualifications did he have to teach others? Lin Shuanghe opened his folding fan and proudly said, I don't know anything else, but I know how to paint. Watch me. Late at night, the sharp sound of a zither could be heard from the room next door. Fei Nu was helping Xiaoju tidy up the documents on the table. When she heard the sound, her hands trembled, and the documents scattered in a mess. He looked up at Xiaoju again. Xiaoju reached out her hand to support her forehead. She looked like she couldn't bear it. Fei Nu secretly sighed. He Yan shone brightly in the martial arts arena. He knew everything, but he didn't expect him to be so slow when it came to zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting. This zither, if it was any girl in the capital who learned the zither, even if she was 5 years old, she would be able to play it much better than this. 3 days, 3 whole days. They would be leaving in 2 days, but He Yan's zither was just a wall away. He didn't seem to be improving at all. It was as if because he was getting impatient, his music was getting worse and worse. Qi Wu was an impatient person. He secretly pulled Fei Nu aside a few times and said, "If you don't know how to play, then don't play. Young master must be crazy. It's fine if he found a man to pretend to be his wife, but he even found one who doesn't know how to do anything. Isn't this giving others a chance to find out? Even if there's a shortage of people, it shouldn't be like this." He still didn't know He Yan's identity as a woman, so Fei Nu didn't say much. He only said, "Talk less, do more." But tonight, Fei Nu muttered in his heart. He Yan was so slow. Could he really bear such a heavy responsibility? Suspense. In the room next door, Lin Shuanghe waved his hand and said weakly, "Younger sister He, that's enough. You can stop playing." He Yan stopped and looked at him. He humbly asked, "Brother Lin, have I improved compared to yesterday?" Lin Shuanghe choked and was speechless. Although he wasn't outstanding in zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting, he was still an elegant young master in the capital. He still knew a thing or two about these things. He originally thought that with his guidance, even if he couldn't practice very well in 3 days, he would at least be able to put on a show. But looking at He Yan's current appearance, he realized that he had overestimated himself. He had never seen such a stubborn woman. After 3 days, not only did she not improve, she played more and more harshly. Lin Shuanghe finally realized that there was actually someone in the world who could play the zither with such a sound. It was said that one was marked by the company one kept. Xiao Ju was also a master in both literature and martial arts. Her elegance was unparalleled. He Yan had been with Xiao Ju for so long, but why didn't he have the slightest bit of elegance? Yet, this girl still looked like she was very hardworking. Seeing how hardworking she was, he couldn't even say harsh words. This reminded Lin Shuanghe of a classmate when he was young. That classmate was also like this. His head hung from a beam and an awl pierced his thigh. It was too horrible to look at. Forget it, forget it. This child couldn't be taught. Lin Shuanghe stood up and said with a smile, "Good, very good. Younger sister He, you're really talented. As long as you practice a little harder, you'll definitely amaze the world. You should practice for the next few days. When you reach Jiang, you can ask Huijin to personally give you a few pointers. I think you'll be able to graduate from his apprenticeship." He Yan, really? Lin Shuanghe, it can't be any more real. He thought that He Yan was really too difficult to handle. It was better for him to retreat early. This kind of complicated teaching should be left to Xiao Ju. After all, He Yan was his person and his wife. This was also Xiao Ju's responsibility. When he thought of this, he felt relieved and relaxed. Lin Shuanghe smiled and said, "Then I won't be coming for the next 2 days. Younger sister He, you should practice more, practice more." He was debt-free and left lightly. He Yan was still skeptical. She clearly felt that it was unpleasant, but Lin Shuanghe said it like that. Was it really that good? The interests of elegant people were indeed different from those of ordinary people. In the next 2 days, besides practicing the zither, He Yan also found time to bid farewell to Hong Shan and the others. Jiang was not like Liangzhou City. If he came and went, he would probably be away for at least half a year and would not be able to return to the Liangzhou City guards. He missed his old friends after not seeing them for such a long time. You went to work with military governor Xiao again? Hong Shan came closer and asked, he, are you going to be promoted? Give birth? What do you mean by giving birth? Xiao Mai was roasting a bird's egg that he had just picked up from the fire. It was very hot. He flipped it around in his palm. Who's giving birth? Shi Tu gently knocked his head and looked at He Yan. Take care. He Yan smiled. Of course. I haven't congratulated you guys on entering the Vanguard Battalion. After the end of the year, a portion of the new recruits were selected to enter the Vanguard Battalion. Shi Tu, Jiang Jiao, Wang Ba, and Huang Xiong were among them. Xiao Mai was still young and did not perform well in training. Hong Shan had always been average in all aspects. Fortunately, the two of them did not mind this. They were satisfied with being ordinary soldiers. Entering the Vanguard Battalion is not as good as you. Wang Ba took the opportunity to mock He Yan. You can go out with military governor Xiao every few days. You don't have to go through daily training, and you can also gain favor in front of your superior. Even the gods are not as good as you. Brother Wang, that's not right. When brother he goes out with the governor, it will not be as easy as we think. There might be danger. Jiang Jiao looked at He Yan. You must be careful. He Yan stretched. I've always been careful. Seeing this, Huang Xiong twisted the prayer beads around his neck and said, since you've always wanted to be promoted, this is a good opportunity. Military Governor Xiao is willing to take you with him because he has taken a fancy to something you have. If you can seize this opportunity and earn military merits, you will be one step closer to what you want to do. You will also be able to accomplish what you want to do faster. He Yan thought that Xiao Ju was willing to take her with him because he had taken a fancy to something she had. That was because he had taken a fancy to her as a woman. You didn't expect this, did you? Well said, well said. She waved her hand. Everyone, don't worry. We are all brothers who fought for the flag on White Moon Mountain and slept together on the same bed. As long as I have a bite to eat, you will all have a bite to drink. If I can really be promoted, I will definitely not forget my comrades. However, I also believe that even without me, you will be able to make a name for yourself in Liangzhou. Well said. Huang Xiong said. If you don't rely on others and rely on yourself, you are all heroes. He Yan smiled slightly and looked at the vast sky of the Liangzhou garrison. The snow-capped mountains in the distance would gradually melt. Winter had passed, and spring would soon arrive. Jiang was different from Liangzhou. The mountains were high and the rivers were far away. Who knew what would happen in the future? She clapped her hands and stood up. The future was not something that could be imagined just by thinking about it. She just had to keep her head down and keep moving forward. End of Volume 3. Chapter 129. It would take almost a month to travel from Liangzhou to Jiang City. After the new year, spring arrived. They traveled all the way south. The closer they got to Jiang, the warmer the weather became. By the time they were almost there, the wildflowers by the roadside had bloomed, and the swallows had started to build their nests. Spring had really arrived. Outside Jiang City, Qi Wu drove a carriage over and said, "Young master, this is the best carriage you can buy in this area." The carriage looked very luxurious. It was wrapped in fine peacock green silk, and the white gauze inside swayed slightly. It was very spacious and comfortable to sit in. He Yan was tired after riding for so many days. He Yan was very satisfied to be able to relax. However, Lin Shuanghe was still very picky. That's it. I wouldn't even look at something like this in Shuojing. The wood is too inferior. Didn't I say to pick the most expensive one? Qi Wu said, this is already the most expensive one. He Yan looked at Lin Shuanghe and sighed in his heart. After so many years, this young master's style of living and enjoying life had not changed at all. He Yan could not understand why Xiao Zhu had to bring Lin Shuanghe along when she went to Jiang. Wasn't she dragging him down? He Yan was not the only one who could not understand. Lin Shuanghe was also puzzled. Before he left, he confirmed in every possible way, "Are you sure you didn't say anything wrong? You want to bring me along to Jiang?" Xiao Zhu said, "I'm sure." "Why?" "Because we need a housekeeper." "A housekeeper?" Lin Shuanghe was angry. "Have you seen a housekeeper as charming as me?" Xiao Zhu sized him up. "I've seen one now." Although Lin Shuanghe said that, he also wanted to go out with Xiao Zhu to see the world. He had never been to Jiang, but he heard that the girls there were all beautiful. Wouldn't it be a pity if he did not see them once in his life? Therefore, he just grumbled a little and agreed to go with them. They did not pay attention to anything else during their journey. However, now that they were about to reach Jiang City, they had to dress up properly. After all, they were no longer Xiao Huijin and He Yan. They were Hu Province's wealthy young master Qiao Huanqing and his newly married wife Wen Yuyan, as well as their guards Qi Wu and Fei Nu, and housekeeper Lin Shuanghe. Slave Fei took out the communication token and looked at the city gate of Jiang in the distance. He said, "Young master, once we enter the city and find an inn to settle down, we still need to buy 2 maidservants. It's impossible for a wealthy young master and young mistress to travel without even bringing a servant girl with them. They had to take care of their own food, clothing, and daily necessities. Let alone Cui Yuji, no one would believe it." "Buy maidservants?" Lin Shuanghe said, "I'll go too. I know how to pick girls." Xiao Zhu did not bother to pay attention to him. She only instructed Fei Nu, "Find the younger ones. Let them go home after we're done with Jiang." Fei Nu agreed. Qi Wu and Fei Nu drove the carriage outside. The carriage slowed down and slowly arrived at the Jiang city gates. Fei Nu handed the pass to the guards at the city gates. The guards looked carefully at the black words on the pass and suddenly became respectful. "So you're Cui Zhongqi's family. Please enter." Lin Shuanghe asked, "Is Cui Yueji's status in Jiang very high? I heard that he grew up with Princess Meng Ji. He's loyal and capable. The princess trusts him a lot," He Yan answered. Lin Shuanghe asked curiously, "How did you know?" He Yan replied, "I heard it from someone." Xiao Zhu glanced at her but did not say anything. He Yan had never been to Jiang, but she had heard some things about the people and things in Jiang. It was because her master, Lu Buwang, came from outside Jiang City and had told her many anecdotes about Jiang. After hearing a lot, she also yearned for Jiang. However, it was troublesome to travel between the territories of the vassal kings. She did not expect that she could take advantage of Xiao Zhu to come and take a look at the Shui city that Lu Buwang mentioned. It was really interesting. Jiang City was a beautiful city. Thousands of households were connected, and trade was prosperous. There was a canal outside the city where merchant ships gathered. Jiang was rich in silk, satins, and tea leaves that flowed along the Yuyang River to Yangzhou. It could be said that thousands of boats sailed like the wind. There were large and small rivers in the city. Small boats could be seen under bridges everywhere. The bows of the boats were filled with fruits and small things. This was the Shui city of Jiang. The people of the Central Plains had never seen such a scene. He Yan leaned on the carriage and looked out, clicking her tongue in wonder. Lin Shuanghe sighed and said, "Jiang is really like what Wanderer said. It's really a fairy-like place. No wonder it's easy to get out but hard to get in. If I came here, I wouldn't want to leave either. Look at the girls here. They're so beautiful and fresh. They're different from the girls in Shuajing City." He Yan was speechless. She thought, "You didn't say that when you were in Shuajing City." She turned to look at Xiao Zhu again. Xiao Zhu was sitting in the carriage. He didn't seem to be interested in the bustling scene outside the carriage. He sat there lazily, and his eyes were calm, without the slightest surprise. "Commander-in-Chief, should we go find an inn first?" she asked. "What Commander-in-Chief?" Lin Shuanghe immediately said, "We're already in Jiang." "You can't call me Commander-in-Chief, lest you expose yourself." He Yan asked, "Then what should I call you?" "Of course you should call me husband." When the word husband came out, He Yan and Xiao Ju were shocked. Xiao Ju's expression was even more indescribable. It was very interesting. She endured it, and after a while, she flicked her sleeves and said, "You don't have to call me husband now. It would be weird to call him that in the future, okay?" He Yan's heart was pained. This task seemed good, but he didn't expect it to be so difficult to carry out. It even required him to throw away his sense of shame. No wonder the exchange condition was to join the Southern Prefecture Army. Xiao Ju said, "Let's find an inn first and settle down." Jiang was rich in resources, and it was prosperous. They didn't need to be picky when looking for an inn. Qi Wu picked a place that was closest to the city center. It was convenient for him to familiarize himself with the city. They first put down the heavier things on the carriage. Fei Nu walked over and said, "Young master, I just asked around. There's a restaurant nearby. The restaurant's lady boss will help to buy and sell servant girls for the rich families. If you're staying here today, you can go to the lady boss to look for help." Xiao Ju nodded. He Yan hesitated for a moment and said, "I won't go." They paused. Lin Shuanghe asked, "Young mistress, what's the matter?" He Yan didn't have any other reason. He just couldn't bear to see other people sell their sons and daughters. Even though he knew that some children might not necessarily have a bad life after entering a rich family as a servant girl, he still felt uncomfortable in his heart. When he was in the army, he was harassed by the Chang people in the war-torn lands. It was common practice for the common people to sell their sons and daughters. If it was a son, it would be better. At most, they would be sold to other people as long-term workers. He Yan had seen it before. A 13 or 14-year-old girl sold to a 60-year-old man as a concubine for only a piece of sesame seed cake. Human life was so cheap. She really didn't like to see people being picked and sold like goods. I'm a woman now, right? She casually made up an excuse. "I can't run around in this outfit. It doesn't look like Wen Yuan. I was thinking if there's a ready-made clothing store nearby. I'll go and buy 2 pieces of women's clothing. If there's jewelry, I'll also buy some so that we won't be exposed when we meet Cui Yuezhi." In order to make it easier for her to travel, she still borrowed Cheng Li's clothes. Now that they were in Jiang, it was not appropriate for her to dress as a man. When Lin Shuanghe heard this, he felt that what she said was quite reasonable. He said, "That's fine too. Qi Wu, follow her." Xiao Ju said, "If there's anything, send a signal." Qi Wu acknowledged. Xiao Ju looked at He Yan again. "You stay nearby. Don't go too far. Jiang is not like Liangzhou. It's best to be cautious." He Yan nodded. "Okay. Then let's split up." Lin Shuanghe waved his fan. "Young mistress, remember to buy a few more beautiful clothes. When the time comes, we'll show them how beautiful the girls in the Central Plains are." Xiao Ju said, "Shut up." The 3 of them went down the stairs of the inn and left. He Yan and Qi Wu were left alone. Qi Wu thought, Lin Shuanghe is wrong. He Yan is not a woman. No matter how he dresses up, he can't be beautiful. What's the point? Just as he thought of this, he saw He Yan looking at the mirror and pulling out the hairpin on her head. In an instant, her black hair fell to her shoulders. He Yan turned her head. "I'm a man. It'll attract attention if I go to a ready-made clothing store to buy women's clothes. Let your hair down first. What do you think?" She asked Qi Wu. "How do I look now?" Qi Wu. It's okay. He muttered in his heart, why didn't I realize that He Yan actually looks like a woman? I thought that he would be difficult to look at if he dressed up as a woman. Now that this guy let his hair down, he really does look like a woman. No wonder the young master chose him to go with them. Let's go, Chi Wu said. Let's take a walk around the area while it's still bright. The two of them went out together. Jiang City was located further south than Liangzhou City, so the weather was much warmer. Now that it was spring, the sun was slightly peeking out, warming people's bodies. The willow trees emitted a soft green color, and the spring scenery was boundless. The sound of hawkers hawking their wares could be heard everywhere. The people of Jiang originally relied on fishing for a living. Their culture was warm and open, and everyone was hospitable. When they passed by a fruit vendor, he saw that He Yan was looking at a few fruits. He insisted on stuffing a few fruits into He Yan's arms and said, "Young mistress, take it. It's free. You can have a taste." Chi Wu, he was actually called young mistress. His disguise was too good. He Yan took the fruits with a smile and handed them to Chi Wu. He said, Jiang City is really good. No wonder Lu Buwang's tone was full of nostalgia when he mentioned Jiang back then. Thinking of Lu Buwang, He Yan was a little worried. Now that she was staying with Xiao Ju, how could she find a suitable reason to go out of the city to look for Lu Buwang's traces? Moreover, Lu Buwang had said it vaguely at that time. Now, it seemed that Jiang City was so big that it was really not easy to find someone. While she was thinking, Chi Wu had already asked a stall owner who was selling clay figurines next to him, "Little brother, may I ask if there are any shops selling ready-made clothes nearby?" When the stall owner heard this, he smiled and said, "Judging from your accent, you're not from Jiang, right? You've asked the right question." He pointed in a direction and said, "Jiang's embroidery workshop is the largest ready-made clothes shop. There are the best and most clothes in there. If you want to buy clothes, you can't go wrong there." Chi Wu thanked the stall owner and walked in the direction pointed by the stall owner with He Yan. He Yan was a little nervous. Chi Wu asked, "What's wrong with you?" "I feel a little uncomfortable buying women's clothes," He Yan said. Chi Wu nodded and said, "It's quite uncomfortable." He Yan spent more time as a man than as a woman in both his previous and current lives. However, even though he was a woman, he didn't care much about dressing up. He would wear whatever the residents prepared for him. If he really wanted to pick something, he wouldn't be able to pick it out. He thought to himself that he shouldn't make a fool of himself and pick something that didn't suit him. However, no matter how afraid he was, he still had to go through this. The embroidery workshop wasn't far from here, so it didn't take long for them to arrive. The clay figurine stall owner was right. The embroidery workshop looked very big. It had a total of 5 floors, and it looked like a pavilion. When the two men in green standing at the door saw them coming, they smiled and went forward to welcome them. One of them said, "Sir, is this your first time in the embroidery workshop?" He Yan nodded and said, "Yes, we want to buy a few clothes. May I ask if you or this young master wants to choose clothes?" The man pointed upstairs and said, "In our embroidery workshop, the first floor is for men's clothes, the second floor is for children's clothes, and the remaining 3 floors are for women's clothes." He paused and said, "The higher you go, the more expensive the clothes are." He smiled and rubbed his hands. "Look, let's go to the 3rd floor." He Yan made a prompt decision. "Okay." The man replied with a smile. "Please follow me." It was really big inside. Every floor was covered with fine carpets, and the decorations were very beautiful. Unlike the elegance of Shuo capital, Jiang's decorations were more colorful and lively, just like the people there. There were murals painted on the walls, and it seemed like everyone was having fun together. The streets on the water were very lively, and everyone was jostling shoulder to shoulder. It was very interesting. When the man saw He Yan staring at the murals without blinking, he smiled and said, "This is Jiang's Water God Festival. Jiang relies on water to make a living, and we worship the water god every March. The two of you don't look like locals. If you stay here long enough, you can come and watch the water god festival. It's very lively. March? He Yan asked. Yes, it's this month. The water god festival is very fun. Miss, if you go, you won't lose out. The people here were very enthusiastic, so He Yan didn't say anything. However, he was curious about the water god festival that the man mentioned. When they reached the third floor, the man stopped and said, "This is it. Miss, please take a look first." He Yan nodded. Chi Wu was a little uncomfortable. This floor was full of women's clothes, and it didn't look good for a man like him to stay here. She said to He Yan, "I'll wait for you downstairs. When you're done choosing, just send someone to inform me." He Yan said, "Okay." After Chi Wu left, the man continued to show He Yan around. As he looked, he explained to He Yan, "This cherry red antique satin moonlight dress has been selling the best recently. It's spring, and everyone likes to wear red. It's the most eye-catching when you go for a walk. If you want to attract your lover's attention, this is the best. This lotus-colored peony jade dress is also not bad. When paired with a round fan, you'll look like a fairy from a painting. Elegant and otherworldly, noble and elegant. It's very wonderful. Look at this. This colorful butterfly pattern dress has 100 butterflies on it. They were all sewn on by our embroiderers. Think about it. If you wear this dress among the flowers, you'll definitely attract a lot of butterflies. You'll be surrounded by real and fake butterflies. How adorable." He Yan was speechless. The shop assistant of the embroidery workshop was too eloquent. He Yan was moved by his words. She felt that every piece of clothing hanging on the wall was unique and exquisite. Even if it was an ordinary woman, she would be dazzling and moving when she wore it. She was the only one on this floor. If a few more people came to look at the clothes, how would the man be able to handle it? Fortunately, she had some discernment and didn't believe everything. However, she couldn't help but feel dizzy after looking at all the clothes on the third floor. There were too many, and she didn't know which one to choose. He Yan thought for a while and looked at the man. "Little brother, I rarely choose my own clothes, so I don't know which one to choose. Why don't you help me look for clothes that won't go wrong, won't be picky, and won't be impolite at the banquet?" The man was also a shrewd person. When he heard He Yan's words, he knew that He Yan didn't know how to pick out clothes. He smiled and said, "Sure. Miss, I see that your skin is fair, and you are different from the women of Jiang. With such outstanding looks, wouldn't it be a pity if you only choose clothes that won't go wrong and bury your beauty? Why don't?" He walked in front of a piece of clothing and picked up a corner of it to show He Yan. "Take a look at this one. This heavenly fragrance jade dress is very light and thin. It feels very delicate to the touch. The color is aqua blue, and it suits your skin very well. The style is simple and elegant, but if you wear it to the banquet, you definitely won't be impolite. There is only one piece of this dress left. If you like it, why don't you choose this one?" He Yan walked in front of the dress. Compared to the previous ones, this dress looked much simpler. It wasn't as fancy, and it felt very comfortable to the touch. He Yan smiled and said, "Then I'll choose this one, I want this dress." A hand reached out from the side and snatched the dress from He Yan's hand. He Yan turned around and saw a young woman in a yellow dress standing in front of him. She had an almond-shaped face and peachy cheeks, and her beauty was like a hibiscus. However, her skin was slightly darker, and her figure was excellent. She was also quite tall. She didn't even look at He Yan. It was as if He Yan didn't exist in front of her. Behind her were two maidservants dressed in green. One of them said, "Why are you still in a daze? Why didn't you greet our young lady when you saw her?" The man was stunned. He quickly bowed and greeted, "Eldest young lady Yan." The woman called eldest young lady Yen snorted in response. The man turned around again and wiped his sweat. He said to He Yen, "Miss, why don't you choose another piece?" Even a fool would understand what was going on. No matter where and when, there was no lack of people who relied on their family background to run rampant without fear. The man was innocent. He Yen didn't want to make things difficult for him. Moreover, it was just a piece of clothing. He smiled and said, "It's fine. I'll choose another one." "I'm sorry." The man turned his back and said in a low voice, "Eldest young lady Yen usually doesn't come to our ready-made clothing store. Even if she comes, she won't go to the third floor. I don't know what happened today, it's fine." He Yen gave him a reassuring look. "There's no need to explain. I understand. Thank you, thank you." The man walked to eldest young lady Yen and smiled. "Eldest young lady Yen, do you need me to choose clothes for you?" "Who are you to choose for me?" Eldest young lady Yen said disdainfully, "Go and choose for others. I don't need your guidance." The man retreated to the side hesitantly and returned to He Yen. Compared to the sarcastic eldest young lady Yen, this man was obviously much gentler and easier to talk to. He smiled and said, "Miss, take a look at this. This Su-embroidered pipa dress is pinched at the waist. The sleeves are also very wide. When you wear it, you feel like you're walking in the clouds. It's also extremely beautiful. The color is also pear blossom white. When you wear it, you will definitely have smooth skin and jade bones. You will be seductive." He Yen couldn't help but laugh when she heard that. This man was selling clothes, so be it. Why was he praising people so easily? It made her feel embarrassed. He Yen looked at the dress and felt that it was not bad. She said, "Then, this one will do." As soon as she finished speaking, the maidservant beside eldest young lady Yen reached out and pulled the dress that He Yen pointed at over. She said, "Our eldest young lady wants this too." Again? He Yen frowned slightly. If it was a coincidence once, it would be intentional if it happened twice. But she had never seen this woman before. Why was she targeting her? She turned around and faced the other party. She asked politely, "May I ask, Miss, did I offend you in any way?" "No." Eldest young lady Yen looked at her and raised her eyebrows. "I'm just picking a dress. How did you offend me? One or two pieces are naturally fine." He Yen smiled. "But don't tell me you'll choose whatever I choose later." Eldest young lady Yen pursed her lips and said arrogantly, "It seems that you're not stupid. I don't understand. Why are you like this? You have to ask why for everything." "Very good, but I'm not your husband. Why should I answer your questions? I'm here today. Even if I buy all the clothes on the third floor, that's because I'm capable. If you're not convinced, you can buy them too. There are so many clothes. There will definitely be one that I don't want. However." She sized up He Yen and said disdainfully, "Look at you. You don't look like you can afford much." He Yen was wearing Ching Li's plain clothes. The material wasn't bad, but she had been on the road for days and was travel-worn. She also came from the inn and didn't have time to change her clothes. In the eyes of others, her head and face were covered in dirt, and she looked poor. What kind of luck did she have? She could even meet such an arrogant young lady when she came out to buy clothes. He Yen had always been simple and violent when dealing with men. Even if she was not convinced, she would at most fight. However, women were different. She could not beat up a lady on the street. "The embroidery workshop is not owned by you." He Yen said patiently, "I just want to buy some clothes. Please don't cause trouble." It would have been fine if she did not say this. Once she said this, the woman was like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. All her fur stood on end. She narrowed her beautiful eyes and said in a sharper voice, "Cause trouble? You actually said that I'm causing trouble?" Where did this country bumpkin come from? It's fine if you don't know me, but you're even full of filthy words. You want to buy clothes? Look at your shabby appearance. Can you afford it? He Yen, young madam. A voice interrupted. He Yen turned around. He did not know when Xiaoju and Lin Shuanghe had found their way here. Qi Wu and Fei Nu were behind them. There were also two young ladies dressed in pink who stood timidly at the side. Xiaoju walked forward. The Jiyang women were beautiful and bold, while the men were masculine and powerful. A handsome, elegant, and charming young man like him was really rare. Young Madame Yen stared blankly at him. Xiaoju stared at her for a while. Suddenly, she curled her lips and leaned close to He Yan's ear. Her voice was very low, but it was just enough for the people around to hear. What's the matter, madam? Chapter 130. The young man was tall and straight like a pine tree. The dark blue robe on him made him look noble and elegant. His eyes were as dark as the night sky, and they were filled with coldness. However, the corners of his mouth were curled up with a hint of casual mockery. The word madam was so low and mellow that everyone present was intoxicated. He Yen was the same. He only felt the place where his breath touched instantly stiffen. For a moment, he was speechless. Eldest Miss Yen bit her lip and looked at Xiaoju. She was half stunned and half jealous. Such a handsome man was actually married, and the one he married was the country bumpkin beside him. Why? Seeing that He Yen was silent, Xiaoju raised her eyebrows and said in a gentler voice, "Did she bully you?" He Yen was so shocked that he came back to his senses. Just as he was about to speak, eldest Miss Yen spoke first. She said, "Young master, I didn't bully anyone. I just took a fancy to the same clothes as this young lady." When eldest Miss Yen spoke to Xiaoju, she was no longer as aggressive as before. She was so gentle that it was as if she was a different person. She couldn't bear to look away from Xiaoju. "But I clearly heard you say that our young madam has no money." Lin Shuanghe wanted to see the world in chaos. He waved his fan and said, "Even I, the butler, can't stand it anymore." Butler? The servant in green, who didn't dare to make a sound, was secretly shocked. He thought that it was a young master from some family, but he didn't expect it to be a butler. Oh no, oh no. This group of people had extraordinary appearances and auras. Could it be that some important person had come to Jiang? He wondered if he had offended her just now. Xiaoju turned and asked He Yen, "Did you choose anyone?" He Yen shook his head. Eldest Miss Yen handed over the aqua blue dress that He Yen had taken a fancy to just now. She smiled and said, "If you really like this dress, I'm willing to part with it." He Yen was speechless. Was Xiaoju's face so useful? This change in attitude was like a completely different person. He Yen thought sourly, it's really advantageous to be good-looking. Xiaoju only glanced at her indifferently. She did not reach out to take it. Instead, she asked the waiter, "What's upstairs?" In reply to young master, the shop assistant replied while wiping his sweat, "Our embroidery workshop has a total of 5 floors. The 3rd to the 5th floor are all women's ready-made clothes. The clothes on the 5th floor are the most expensive and are specially made for nobles. The price is also higher. Bring out the treasure of your shop." Miss Yan's face froze. He Yen was also shocked. He tugged at Xiaoju's sleeve and whispered, "It's okay, I'll just wear it casually." He Yen felt that it was inappropriate for her to choose the most expensive one based on her family's background. Xiaoju said calmly, "Shut up." The shop assistant of the embroidery workshop was a talented person. He only said, "Please wait a moment." He immediately went upstairs. Not long after, he came down with a small box wrapped in soft satin. He placed the box on the round table in the room. He unlocked the box and carefully took out a thin, pale white silk dress. The pattern of the dress was not complicated. It was not as flashy as the one just now. However, the sunlight shone through the window and shone on the dress. The original white color was actually refracted into a rainbow-like color. It was faintly discernible, like the scales of a mermaid. It was suffused with a faint blue-purple gold powder. It was thin and soft. It did not seem like an ordinary item. This dress is made of mermaid yarn. I dare say that this is the only one in Jiang and Dawei, not to mention the embroidery workshop. This mermaid gauze was bought from a merchant at a high price. The rest of the material was given to Her Highness, and the last bit was used to make this teardrop gauze. This was because under the sun, the dress would emit the color of a mermaid's tears. Dear guest, this is the treasure of our shop. Xiaoju glanced at the dress in the shop assistant's hands and said, "It's barely passable." He Yan felt that there was no need for so many fancy words. Wasn't it just a dress? What mermaid yarn? It was as if mermaids really existed in this world. It was just a gimmick. How could anyone believe it? How much is it? Lin Shuanghe asked. The shop assistant stretched out a finger and said, 100 gold, 100 gold. He Yan was surprised. Why don't you just rob a bank? 100 gold for a dress. This was too extravagant. She had not been so extravagant when she was a rich young master or madam in her previous life. The shop assistant smiled and said, "Madam, don't underestimate this dress. Other than looking good, it is also a treasure. It can be used for self-defense. It is invulnerable and impervious to fire and water. 100 gold for a dress is a little expensive, but 100 gold for a treasure is already very cheap. There's no need for that." Qi Wu whispered to Fei Nu, "Would a rich madam who can afford to wear this dress go through a mountain of swords and a sea of flames for no reason? There's really no need for that. I'll take this one." Xiao Ju said calmly, "Pick a few other pieces. The ones on the 5th floor will do." "Okay." The shop assistant was overjoyed. It was not every day that he met such a generous customer. He decided to strike while the iron was hot and continued, "Dear guest, do you want to take a look at the jewelry in our embroidery workshop? This tear gauze should be paired with a pearl peony hairpin, a pair of exquisite white jade pendants, and shoes of the same color. Our madam's rare beauty will not be wasted." He Yan, ? Xiao Ju said, "Choose as you see fit." Eldest Miss Yan was stunned. He Yan felt that it was inappropriate. He tugged at Xiao Ju's clothes and pulled him towards him, saying, "It's too wasteful." Xiao Ju said calmly, "Let go." He Yan immediately let go of her. Just as Xiao Ju had said, the shop assistant went to pick out a few pieces of clothing, a few pieces of jewelry, and brought over a small chest for everyone to look at. After counting them one by one, he closed the chest and said, "A total of 200 gold." He Yan almost fainted when he heard this. Xiao Ju said to Lin Shuanghe, "Pay up." Lin Shuanghe was shocked. "Me? Do you want me to pay?" "Housekeeper." Lin Shuanghe, he could only take out a banknote from his sleeve. He forced a smile and said, "Okay, I'll pay." Just as he was about to hand the banknote over, Xiao Ju said, "Wait." Everyone paused. He Yan was delighted. Why did she suddenly realize that she was too extravagant and wanted to turn back? Xiao Ju looked at Miss Yan and smiled. She said slowly, "I forgot to ask if this lady is interested in the same box of clothing. If she likes it, I'm willing to part with it." Eldest Miss Yan's expression was extremely ugly. Although her family was rich, she did not always bring 200 gold with her when she went out. Moreover, there were tailors at home who specialized in making clothes. It was difficult for her to spend 200 gold to buy things at a ready-made clothing store. This overly beautiful man was clearly standing up for his wife. She gritted her teeth and said, "Thank you for taking care of me. I don't like it." Xiao Ju nodded and ordered Fei Nu to put away the box. Just as she was about to leave, she looked at the other party and said, let me give you a kind reminder. Everyone was stunned. The beautiful man's eyes were gentle, but his tone was full of sarcasm. Your skin is too dark. The clothes from the embroidery workshop don't suit you. Go to another shop. When they reached downstairs, Lin Shuanghe was still holding his stomach and laughing non-stop. Ha 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 ha. Why? Young master, your words are too harsh. Didn't you see that lady's face just now? Oh my God, if I were her, I wouldn't be able to sleep tonight. She has her heart on you. It's fine if you reject her, but you still have to be so sarcastic. Oh my God, ha ha ha. He Yan also felt that Xiao Ju's actions were too childish. However, this wasn't what surprised her more. She caught up with Xiao Ju in a few steps and asked, she wanted to take the clothes I chose just now because her skin is dark and she can't wear these colors? She knew it. It was her first time in Jiang and she had no enmity with the other party. Why would she find trouble with her? Later, when she heard Xiao Ju say this before she left, she realized that perhaps the shop assistant had said, fair skin, when he was introducing the ready-made clothes to her, which made Miss Yan unhappy. There were such people in the world who would be jealous and hateful when they saw that someone else had something they didn't have. Aren't you very good at lying? Is that all you're capable of? Xiao Ju's expression returned to indifference. She said disdainfully, can't you tell that she's jealous of you? How would I know that there are things about me that make people jealous? He Yan muttered, especially when women are jealous of me. It was common to be envied by men. They said that he was good at fighting, could run fast, and could drink a lot. So, this was what it felt like to be envied by women. In this way, she felt that women's jealousy was very cute. It was just a little quarrel and a little trouble, unlike men who would fight for the slightest thing. Also, she asked Xiao Ju, am I very fair? Is that why she's jealous? Am I very fair? She often dressed like a teenager and was already used to it. Suddenly, she saw that her long hair was spread out. Although she was still wearing a teenager's clothes, her eyes were lively and delicate. She indeed looked like a young girl. Although she looked a little silly, but, Xiao Ju looked away. You look like a piece of charcoal. He Yan was speechless. Would this person die if she said something nice? Behind them, the two newly bought maidservants in pink clothes were timid and did not dare to speak. Qi Wu looked at He Yan, who was deliberately teasing Xiao Ju, and rubbed her arms. She could not help but say to Fei Nu, this He Yan, isn't it too fast for him to get into character? Look at him now, he's simply treating himself as a woman. I'm getting goosebumps. It's strange that he's acting like this. Fei Nu said, see no evil, hear no evil. When they returned to the inn, the two maidservants first looked at He Yan. One of them said timidly, Madam, we'll go upstairs to tidy up your room first. Please wait for a while before coming up. He Yan said. Okay. When the two maidservants went upstairs, He Yan asked, these are the maidservants you bought? They're too young. The two maidservants looked at most 12 or 13 years old. He did not know if it was because they were that old or because they were too thin and weak, but they looked exactly the same. They were a pair of twins. Lin Shuanghe answered, we have no choice. Our young master is too beautiful. If we find someone around your age, it's inevitable that she'll have other thoughts. What if she climbs into our young master's bed in the middle of the night? It's safe and reliable to find someone who's young and immature. When He Yan heard this, he felt that Lin Shuanghe was simply a genius. What he said was very reasonable. Based on Miss Yan's reaction at the embroidery workshop, Xiao Ju's face and body were indeed enough to attract bees and butterflies. It was better to be careful. Lin Shuanghe said again, although these two maidservants are young, I spent a lot of money on them. I say. He suddenly reacted and looked at Xiao Ju. You insisted on bringing me to Jiang not because you need a butler, but because you need a money bag, right? He Yan burst out laughing. Lin Shuanghe was still bitterly reprimanding Xiao Zhu's actions. Do you know that what you're doing is very unkind? You bought clothes for your wife, maidservants, and an inn for her. Why should I spend money? It's not like they're mine. He Yan could not laugh anymore. Xiao Zhu said indifferently, why did you follow me all the way to Jiang safely? Because you're here, Lin Shuanghe said. Nonsense, with Xiao Zhu around, who would dare to block the road and rob them? Xiao Zhu did not deny it. That's enough. Protection fee. Lin Shuanghe said, protection fee. He said, Xiao Zhu gently shushed him and looked at the box outside. She raised her eyebrows and said, go and move the things, Butler Lin. Lin Shuanghe had never won against Xiao Zhu when it came to talking. He snorted, took out a few round things from his sleeve, and stuffed them into He Yan's hands. He Yan was puzzled. What are these? I bought rouge and powder for my wife. Lin Shuanghe's attitude towards He Yan was very good. He said, when we came to find you after buying the maidservants, we already met Cui Yuezhi's people. The Cui family had already arranged for the guards at the city gate. When they saw Qiao Huanqing's pass, they reported to them that we might have to stay at the Cui residence tonight. After thinking about it, you still need these. He Yan stared at the rouge and powder box in his hands and frowned. This was too difficult for her. I'm going to move the things. Lin Shuanghe waved his hand and leaned close to He Yan. He whispered, younger sister He, dress up well. Let those blind people see how beautiful you are. I have high hopes for you. Tonight, you will be the most beautiful pearl in Jiang City. He Yan. Thank you so much. A young maidservant's crisp voice came from the corridor. Madam, young master, we have finished tidying up the room. You can come in now. Xiao Zhu said, let's go. He Yan put away the rouge and powder and walked upstairs with Xiao Zhu. When they reached the door of the room, they stopped and asked hesitantly, you're going in too? Although they were husband and wife in name, but, were they going to stay in the same room? She still had to change her clothes. That was not good. Xiao Zhu looked at her as if she was looking at an idiot. After a while, she said, I'm going to Lin Shuanghe's room. Call me when you're done. He Yan. Okay. She entered her room. The two maidservants retreated to the sides and looked at her with their grape-like eyes, carefully waiting for her orders. He Yan could not stand the maidservants' gazes. She sat down and asked politely, what are your names? My name is Cui Jiao. My name is Heng Qiao. He Yan nodded. Good name. Cui Jiao, Heng Qiao, I'm a little hungry now. Can you go to the kitchen downstairs and help me make some snacks? I want them fresh out of the oven. Just keep an eye on them, okay? The maidservants hurriedly nodded and said, okay, madam. We will go now. After Cui Jiao and Heng Qiao left, He Yan breathed a sigh of relief. She was not used to being served by others. Looking at the clothes and jewelry in the box, she felt a headache coming on. After thinking about it, she decided to wash her face first and wash her deliberately thick eyebrows. Now that she was traveling with Xiao Zhu, she did not deliberately darken her face to save time. She had covered her face for an entire winter in the Liang province guards, so her face was already white. There was clean hot water in the room. He Yan washed her face, wiped it with a handkerchief, and sat down at the table. He did not know if it was because she was a year older, but Lady He's face was much more beautiful than a year ago. Her facial features were also more distinct. She used to be a charming little beauty, but now, the tackiness between her eyebrows had been washed away, and there was a trace of heroism and straightforwardness. Looking at her now, she was really quite attractive. She had seen too many men's clothes, so she was not used to seeing a woman's clothes. He Yan picked up the wooden comb on the table and first combed her long hair. Her gaze fell on the pile of cosmetics that Lin Shuanghe had given her. Rouge and lipstick. How should she use it? She could not remember clearly. She had used it a few times when she was Madame He. After that, she had maidservants to serve her, so she did not need to do it herself. She really did not know where to start. She picked up the conch mayonnaise on the table. She would start with what she was familiar with. Yen moved her head closer to the mirror and began to seriously draw her eyebrows, one stroke at a time. She had just finished drawing one when someone knocked on the door. Yen opened the door with the conch mayonnaise in one hand. The moment he opened the door, he saw Xiaoju. He stuffed the box into Yen's hands and said impatiently, "You forgot to bring your clothes." Yen slapped her head. "Yes. I almost forgot." She did not even bring the clothes that were worth 200 gold taels, so why did she put on makeup? Yen said to Xiaoju, "Thank you." Xiaoju's gaze fell on her face. She was stunned and asked in disbelief, "What are you drawing?" Yen said, "My eyebrows." "How's my skill?" The corners of Xiaoju's mouth twitched. She was used to dressing as a man, so she naturally drew her eyebrows thick and thick. That was why she looked like a young man with sharp eyebrows and bright eyes. Now that her long hair was loose and her face was dressed as a woman, she naturally had to draw a woman's eyebrows. Yen drew the difference between a man and a woman. She drew her sharp eyebrows into curved eyebrows. Curved, thick, and thick eyebrows made it look as if there was an earthworm above her eyes. Moreover, it was the kind that was very fat. Xiaoju could not bear to watch anymore. She grabbed Yen's arm and dragged her to the basin. She said coldly, "Wash it off." "Why?" Yen raised her head. "I think it's quite good." Xiaoju looked down at her and sneered. "You think it's quite good?" "Okay," Yen said softly. "It's not very good." "But so what?" She was good at what she did for men, but she was clumsy when it came to women. She did not do it overnight. "Where are the two girls?" "They went to the kitchen to prepare some food for me." Yen quickly washed the eyebrows that she had drawn just now and wiped them dry with a handkerchief. She was discouraged and decided to go all out. "I only know how to draw eyebrows like this." "Why don't?" She opened her palm, revealing the conch shell in her palm. "You do it." She was just joking. She did not expect Xiaoju to look at her and reach out to take it. Yen was really frightened this time. Xiaoju walked over to the window seat and saw that she was not moving. "Come here." Yen instinctively walked over. He said again, "Sit down." Yen sat down on the stool in front of her. However, she still felt that it was inconceivable. She asked, "Are you really going to draw for me?" Xiaoju glanced at her uneasy face and pursed her lips. She said meaningfully, "Are you afraid?" "Afraid?" Yen immediately sat up straight. "What's there to be afraid of?" "I'm just afraid that you won't be able to draw well." "I'm just boasting." Xiaoju sneered. "You worry too much. Sit down." It was warm in Jiang in March. The sunlight shone in through the window and secretly climbed onto the young man's face. The handsome man, who was as pure as the spring moon, gently brushed her eyebrows with his slender fingers. Yen felt a little uneasy. She had never thought that Xiaoju would draw for her. She had never been so close to a man in her previous life. Even her husband, Su Zhiheng, would not do this when they were newlyweds. In the eyes of others, a man drawing for a woman would be seen as a femme fatale and indulging in beauty. However, when Xiaoju seriously drew for her eyebrows, she was mesmerized for a moment. Yen immediately realized that she was mesmerized and leaned back slightly. Xiaoju frowned. "Don't move." She was stunned. Xiaoju's hand had already clasped the back of her head and pulled her in front of him. In an instant, the distance between them shrank even closer than before. This allowed her to see him more clearly. Xiaoju, who had lost his sharpness and coldness, looked exceptionally gentle at this moment. His eyelashes were thick and dense, and they drooped down, covering half of his dark pupils and covering the coolness in his eyes. He sat lazily, and his facial features were peerless. His thin lips were bright red, and it was tempting to keep staring at them. She remembered a rainy night in her previous life. If she had known that it was him, if she could see and accept his gentleness and kindness, would she have softened her attitude and not been so fierce when she looked at his face? Perhaps it was because her gaze was so intense that it was impossible to ignore it. Xiao Ju's hands paused and their eyes met. He Yan suddenly felt guilty, as if he had been caught doing something bad. Xiao Ju frowned slightly. Why is your face so red? Me? He Yan was stunned and unconsciously covered her face with her hands. She really did feel hot. She couldn't find an excuse and stammered. Xiao Ju stared at her for a while and suddenly approached her. Don't tell me you. He raised his eyebrows, his eyes unfathomable, and smiled. Like, no, no, no. Before he could finish, He Yan immediately denied it. She even raised her hands and shouted as if she was swearing, I really don't like you. How could I, an ordinary person, dare to have thoughts about you? I definitely don't dare to have any improper thoughts about you. Really? Xiao Ju leaned back, still holding the conch daisies in his hands. Seeing her hurriedly refute, he sneered and lazily said, I didn't say anything, why are you so agitated? He raised his eyebrows. Do you have a guilty conscience? I really didn't. He Yan was anxious. What was wrong with this person? Why was she still harping on this matter? Was it fun to tease people? What kind of bad fun was this? Outside the door, two maidservants were holding plates of desserts in their hands. They didn't know whether to enter or not. Are we going in or not? Hong Qiao whispered. I think we shouldn't. Cui Jiao said, I've seen a scholar read a poem. Madam and young master are currently in a passionate mood, so it's better not to disturb them. Oh. Hong Qiao nodded, not fully understanding. Cui Jiao thought, what was that poem called? It seemed to be, after putting on makeup, she asked her husband in a low voice, do you draw eyebrows? That's right. Chapter 131. After a while, she finally finished drawing her eyebrows. He Yan snatched the conch from her hands and said, okay, you can go now. Xiao Ju raised her eyebrows, don't you want to look in the mirror? I'll look at it with you after I'm done. He Yan felt that her face would continue to burn as long as this person sat there, so it was better to send him out. She pushed and shoved him out of the door. When she opened the door, she was shocked to see Cui Jiao and Hong Qiao standing outside. He Yan asked, why are you here? Cui Jiao was a little flustered, we brought some snacks over and saw that young master was drawing young mistress's eyebrows, so we didn't dare to disturb you. He Yan, Xiao Ju didn't feel uncomfortable at all and only said, take your time, I'll go find housekeeper Lin. The two maids followed He Yan into the room. Hong Qiao followed behind He Yan and said enviously, young master is so good to young mistress. He Yan, what? He even drew young mistress's eyebrows personally. Perhaps because they were less afraid of He Yan now, the two maids became bolder. Cui Jiao said, we've seen those loving couples, but they wouldn't go to this extent. Well, this illusion of an immortal couple was now a reality by a fluke. He Yan smiled, do you know how to do makeup and comb hair? This was a little difficult for her. It wasn't that she didn't know how to tie a woman's hair, but she only knew the simplest kind. She was afraid that she didn't deserve the title of wealthy madam. We know how to do makeup. Hong Qiao is skillful, and her hair looks the best. Cui Jiao said, what kind of hair do you want today? Do you want light makeup or bright makeup? He Yan was at a loss, I'm going to the banquet, as long as I don't lose my manners there, it's fine. She pointed to the box that Xiao Ju had sent over. The clothes I'm going to wear today are all in there. Just pick one for me. Cui Jiao walked to the front of the box and picked up the tear gauze. She exclaimed, "What a beautiful material. Madam, are these clothes worn by mermaids?" He Yen. Mermaids don't wear clothes. What, were the words mermaids written on their clothes? Why was everyone able to see it except for her? He Yen said, "I'm not going to wear this today. Help me pick out something else." It was 100 gold coins, at the very least, he had to wear it on the most important occasion to be able to afford this price. In any case, his body, hair, and skin were all given to him by his parents. What he looked like depended entirely on his parents. No matter how much she dressed up, that was all she could do. It was just that she had not been a woman for too long. Her heart, which had always been calm, was actually a little nervous. Hopefully, it won't be too embarrassing. In the next room, Lin Shuanghe was half leaning on the couch and drinking tea. Xiao Ju sat in front of the table, wiping the evening zither. As Lin Shuanghe watched, he remembered that when he taught He Yan how to play the zither, He Yan's poor zither skills. Xiao Ju was also an elegant person. She was good at zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting. But how could He Yan, a girl, play the zither and make such an unpleasant sound? If he went to the Cui family tonight, when Yu Yan, He Yan would be asked to teach him a lesson. That would be fun. But, with Xiao Ju around, he should be able to turn the misfortune into a blessing. "You keep looking at me." Second young master Xiao was very perceptive. "Is something the matter?" "No, nothing." Lin Shuanghe opened his fan. "Why are you so suspicious?" "I was just thinking, how beautiful would my little sister He look if she wore women's clothes?" Xiao Ju stopped wiping the zither and slowly asked, "Is there something wrong with your eyes?" "Don't you think so?" "Not at all." Lin Shuanghe was unhappy. "You can doubt my medical skills, but you can't doubt my taste in girls. I saw little sister He at first glance. She was definitely a beauty. She was in the Liang province guards, so she naturally dressed up in a dirty way to not let anyone discover her identity. But with those facial features, if she wore women's clothes, it would be amazing. Besides, even if you're stubborn, you still like her, don't you?" Xiao Ju sneered. "Which eye of yours saw that I liked her?" "I saw it with both of my eyes." "Xiao Huijin, if you really hated her, why did you have to play the hero and save the beauty in the embroidery workshop today? You couldn't stand seeing others bully little sister He, right?" Lin Shuanghe sighed again. "But I don't blame you. I feel that little sister He is always a bit stupid when interacting with girls. She can't even see such obvious jealousy. Tonight, we'll be guests at the Cui family. You know how many people there are in these big families. If someone makes trouble because of this, you have to protect little sister He well. What does that have to do with me? She's your wife now, young Master Qiao. Besides, if someone from the Cui family makes trouble for little sister He, there's an 80 to 90% chance that it's because of you. With that face of yours, you can do harm to beauties, but our little sister He is unlucky. You know that this girl isn't scheming in the ways of the world, but you're different. Take good care of her, take good care of her." He continued to blabber on and on. After talking for an unknown amount of time, the sky was about to darken. Lin Shuanghe finished the pot of tea, stretched, and sat up from the couch. He looked out the window. "It's been so long. Is my little sister He done changing?" Xiao Ju had already finished wiping her zither and was leaning against the table, pretending to be asleep. Hearing this, she opened her eyes and said indifferently, "Go and call someone. It was getting late, and Cui Yueji's people should be here soon." "Okay." Lin Shuanghe stood up. Qi Wu and Fei Nu were guarding outside the door. Several people looked towards He Yan's room. Lin Shuanghe coughed lightly and knocked on the door. Young madam, are you done?" There was a flurry of sounds from inside, and Hong Qiao anxiously said, "Wait. Madam, you forgot to put in the hairpin. Then Cui Jiao reminded her, earrings. You didn't wear earrings. It was the sound of something falling, and the people outside the room were speechless. Xiao Ju slightly raised her eyebrows. Qi Wu whispered to Fei Nu, have you ever seen a man put on makeup? It's scary just thinking about it. Fei Nu. Be careful with your words. Amidst the chaos, the door opened with a creak. Cui Jiao and Heng Qiao wiped the sweat on their foreheads and said, it's done. The person behind the door walked out. It was the same face, but from a young man to a young woman, it was as if they were two different people. This was a young woman around 16 or 17 years old. She was slim and slender, and her pear-colored crescent phoenix tail dress was very tight around her waist. She wore a silk blouse of the same color. Her hair was combed into a deer bun, and there was a jade hairpin inserted diagonally. 2 strands of hair hung in front of her ears, making her ears look even more delicate. There were 2 white jade earrings dangling in front of her ears, and they were swaying. Her skin was very white, and there was a thin layer of makeup on it, making it even more delicate. Her eyes were excessively clear, and there was always a hint of a smile on her face. Her eyebrows were like crescent moons, and her beautiful eyes were bright. Her lips were a little red, and they were full of charm. The young woman's figure was petite, and she was beautiful and bright. However, there was a hint of heroic spirit between her eyebrows, which diluted her charm a little. She was really generous, valiant, and alluring. As a woman, she was slightly immature, but as a young woman, she was fresh, bright, and special. Everyone couldn't help but take a few more glances at her. The people outside the door were startled, and they didn't speak for a long time. He Yan was a little uneasy. She put her hand to her lips and coughed lightly. Is it not very suitable for me? I don't usually put on these things. It's beautiful. Lin Shuanghe was the first to applaud. Young madam, you look like an immortal with just a little bit of makeup. When I opened the door just now, I was wondering which immortal had descended to the mortal world. When you opened the door, I realized that it was you. He Yan was speechless. Lin Shuanghe's flattery skills were comparable to the little shop assistant at the embroidery workshop. He just had to close his eyes and brag blindly. He didn't care if the listener could accept it or not. She looked at Xiao Ju. This brother had to be more realistic. His words and Lin Shuanghe's words were probably the truth. He Yan asked Xiao Ju, how am I? Xiao Ju glanced at her lightly. Not bad. He Yan felt relieved and said, Cui. Eldest uncle's family, are they here yet? If they are, let's go. They're already waiting downstairs. Qi Wu said, the luggage is already in the carriage. Young master and young madam will stay in the Cui mansion when they're in Jiang. Xiao Huanqing and his wife, Wen Yuyan, were here to acknowledge their relatives. Since they were already in Jiang, there was no reason for them to stay in an inn. The few of them tidied up the things in the house and got off the carriage together. There were 2 carriages waiting downstairs. One was for Xiao Ju and He Yan, and the other was for the butler and the servants. Cui Yuezhi seemed to treat his nephew well. He was very considerate. He Yan and Xiao Ju got into the carriage and sat opposite each other. Xiao Ju was fine, but He Yan felt a little uncomfortable. She pinched the corner of her clothes and fixed her hair from time to time. Xiao Ju could not bear it anymore. She looked at her and said, can you not move? Oh. He Yan responded and stopped moving. Her mind was a little messy. Nervous? He asked. Young master. He Yan leaned over and said seriously, let me ask you a question. Speak. Do I look like a girl? Will I be exposed at Cui Yuezhi's house later? He Yan leaned close to her. Perhaps she had just washed up, but there was a faint fragrance of a young girl coming from her body. That pair of clear eyes stared straight at her. Her face was also very small, as if it was only the size of a palm. This kind of puzzled expression, if placed on a teenager's body, perhaps would be a little rough, but when placed on this outfit, it only left a delicate and charming look. Xiaoju looked up and said calmly, "Have you been dressing as a man for so long that your brain is damaged?" She paused. "You're a girl." "I know that I'm a girl." He Yan explained, "But I'm used to being a man in the Liang province guards. Occasionally, my actions become smooth. If there's anything wrong, you have to remind me. Don't worry." He pulled up the corner of his mouth. "No one will think that this face is a man's." He Yan said, "Then didn't you also not realize that I was a girl in Liang province?" Xiaoju did not pay attention to her. After a while, He Yan reacted. She looked at him and said, "Did you mean that I don't look like a man at all? That I look very feminine and very beautiful?" Xiaoju sneered. A girl would not ask such a shameless question. "Then am I a girl or not?" "No." The carriage traveled for about the time it took to burn 3 sticks of incense before it stopped. The Cui family's carriage driver said, "Young Master Qiao, Madam Qiao, we've arrived." Cui Jiao and Hung Qiao got off the carriage first and helped He Yan down. Since she was a young mistress, she naturally needed people to wait on her. He Yan stood in front of the Cui family's gate and sized it up. The houses in Jiang were built differently from the ones in Shuo City in the northern lands. The houses in Shuo City mostly had vermilion-painted doors, which appeared grand and dignified. Because Jiang was close to the water, the houses were mostly black and white. They were elegant and lively. The front door was carved with a picture of the water god, which gave it a different kind of life. The servants here were also dressed in gauze, looking cool and light. An old servant with grizzled hair and dressed in a jade-colored robe came forward to welcome them, smiling as he said, "This must be young Master Qiao, and this should be Madam Qiao. This old servant is the Cui family's housekeeper, Zhong Fu. Sir has entered the prince's residence today, and the princess is staying for a banquet. I'm afraid that he won't return until late at night. This old servant is under Sir's orders to help young Master and Madam settle down. Young Master and Madam should rest well tonight. Tomorrow, Sir will host a banquet and treat everyone well." "She's not here." He Yan was a little surprised, but then he sighed in relief. It was good that she was not here. He could familiarize himself with the Cui family's rules first so that he could deal with whatever came his way in the future. Moreover, she was still not used to living with Xiaoju as a husband and wife. It was good to have one more night to get used to it. He immediately smiled and said, "Sure." The old butler sighed in relief. Previously, when Cui Yuezhi wanted to welcome his nephew back, he deliberately inquired about Xiao Huanqing and Wen Yin's temperament and habits. After all, they had not seen each other for many years. He only remembered that Xiao Huanqing was a playboy and his newly married wife was arrogant and domineering. Today, he felt that the rumors were not true. This old servant will bring young Master and Madam to their room first. Zhong Fu's gaze fell on Lin Shuanghe. This young master. He thought that he was Qiao Huanqing's friend or brother, so he was thinking about what room to arrange for him. Lin Shuanghe smiled. "What a coincidence. You and I are in the same line of work. My surname is Lin, and I am young Master Qiao's butler. Zhong Fu, don't be discouraged." Lin Shuanghe comforted him. "Although the Central Plains is full of outstanding people, I belong to the category of people who are particularly good-looking. Not every butler can be born with a face like mine." Zhong Fu smiled awkwardly. There were 2 rooms in total, not far from each other. Lin Shuanghe, Qi Wu, and Fei Nu lived in one room. He Yan, Xiaoju, and 2 servant girls lived in the other room. The 2 rooms were in the same courtyard. Each room was very large and was divided into an inner room and an outer room. The servant girls slept on the side couch behind a screen in the outer room. The inner room had a study room, tea room, and bedroom. He Yan had lived in the Liang Province Guard for a long time, but even Xiao Ju's room in the Liang Province Guard was far inferior to this one. It was Cui Zhongqi's home after all. It was indeed extravagant. Zhong Fu ordered the servants to bring Lin Shuanghe and the others to the next room. He brought Xiao Ju to the main room and asked respectfully, "Young master, what do you think of this room?" Xiao Ju looked up. "It's all right." This was called not bad, He Yan thought. Xiao Ju, this rich young master, really grasped the way he did things perfectly. However, perhaps he wasn't pretending. After all, second young master Xiao was also really fastidious in the past. After seeing good things, looking at these again, naturally, they were ordinary. Zhong Fu could not hide his surprise. His master had hoped that this nephew of his could return to his hometown and stay in Jiang in the future. However, he knew that Xiao Huanqing's family was now extremely wealthy and was afraid that he would look down on Jiang. So, he renovated this room half a month in advance and moved in many treasures and antiques. This was to make Xiao Huanqing's eyes light up and feel that the Cui family was not inferior to the Qiao family. But now, it seemed that the young master did not care about these things. He did not give up and continued, "There is ambergris in the incense burner. If you like it, you can leave first." Xiao Ju said lightly, "Prepare some food and send it over. My wife may be hungry and needs to wash up and eat. If there's anything, I'll call you." He Yan was shocked when he heard the word wife. But after hearing it, he really did feel hungry. After all, he did not eat much today. Zhong Fu saw this and quickly left. He made a mental note. Young Master Qiao was arrogant and not easy to please. However, he was very considerate towards his wife. If he wanted them to stay, he had to start with his wife. After Zhong Fu left, He Yan asked Cui Jiao and Heng Qiao to fetch some water. She had already bathed when she changed clothes at the inn today. Xiao Ju had not yet done so. "Young master, you can go take a bath first. When the food is served, we can eat together." He Yan lay on the bed and rubbed his shoulders. "I'm exhausted after sitting in the carriage for a whole day." Xiao Ju saw her like this and the corner of her mouth twitched. "Madam Qiao, you should sit properly." He Yan immediately sat up straight. He went to take a bath behind the screen in the tea room. Cui Jiao and Heng Qiao were chased out. The two girls did not know what to do and looked at He Yan. "Young master doesn't want us to serve him." Xiao Ju was the same as He Yan. When she bathed and changed clothes, she really did not like to be around. He Yan waved his hand and said, "It's fine. He's just shy. I'll go. You must be hungry. Fei Nu and the others are just next door. You can go find them to eat. After eating, go rest on the bed in the outer room for a while." "But," Heng Qiao hesitantly said, "Madam doesn't need us to serve her." He Yan waved his hand. "There's no need. We like to do things for each other as husband and wife. You can go and have fun." After all, they were still two young girls. When they heard He Yan's words, they became happy. They thanked He Yan with blushing faces and happily went to find Fei Nu and the others. In an instant, only the two of them were left in the room. He Yan stood up from the bed and walked around the room to look around. Just now, he only looked at the outer room and hurriedly glanced around the inner room. Now that he looked carefully, he realized that the decorations inside were quite exquisite. On the cabinet, there were red orioles and fragrant flowers. On the table, there were the 4 treasures of the study. In front of the small table, there was a chessboard. On the shelf, there was a pile of travel books. Under the tree by the window, there was a small pond with a few colorful fish swimming leisurely. At this moment, the sun was setting. Looking out of the window, it was really elegant and boundless. The people of Jiang were warm and unrestrained. The decorations were also like this. This kind of renovation must have been done specially for Qiao Huanqing. He Yan sighed in his heart. Cui Yuezhi was really sincere to this nephew of his. Unfortunately, the real Qiao Huanqing was a coward and did not particularly want to meet this uncle of his. She closed the window and turned around to light the oil lamp. The lamp holder was in the shape of mandarin ducks playing in water. There was also a beauty lantern in front of the small table, illuminating the room. When he heard that Qiao Huanqing and Wen Yuyan had been married for less than 3 months, they could be considered newlyweds. Cui Yuezhi was so considerate that he even had people decorate the bed meticulously. The red curtains were warm, and the red silk bedding was embroidered with a picture of hundreds of children and thousands of grandchildren. Even the candles were red. There were dried longan fruits in the fruit bowl at the side. He Yan looked around and felt that this bedroom was really decorated like a bridal chamber. If she were to find a red veil to cover her head and find a few people to join in the fun to shout a few words, it would undoubtedly be the wedding day. She and Xiao Ju were going to sleep in a place like this tonight. She did not think of this at first, but now that she thought of it again, she felt uncomfortable all over. The lights slowly climbed up the wall. He Yan saw that there seemed to be some kind of picture on the wall at the head of the bed. This place was near the water, and there were often murals of the people of Jiang worshipping the water god. It was very lively and interesting. He Yan also thought that this was what the painting was like. She kicked off her shoes, picked up the beauty lantern, and climbed to the head of the bed. She held the lantern and looked at it carefully. After Xiao Ju took a bath, she put on her inner clothes and underwear and walked out. The moment she walked out, she saw He Yan holding the lantern and looking carefully at the wall, the mural. It was as if she was studying a treasure map. Her face was serious and serious. He paused for a moment and stared at her for a while. He Yan did not react. She was so engrossed that she did not notice his arrival. He was silent for a moment and walked over. He walked to He Yan's side and bent down to look in the direction she was looking at. He Yan was lost in her thoughts when she suddenly heard a calm voice behind her. "What are you looking at?" Cough, cough, cough. She was shocked and almost choked to death on her own saliva. At the same time, Xiao Ju also saw clearly what was painted on the wall. Little people who were honest with each other, and in all kinds of strange poses. His face turned cold and he said angrily, Yu Yan. Yes, yes, yes. He Yan was so frightened that he trembled. What are you looking at? This was supposed to be a question, but He Yan heard it as a question. He thought that Xiao Ju didn't know what it was, so he answered timidly, Chun too, you haven't seen it before? Xiao Ju's face turned ugly and she was almost angry. I'm not asking you. Ever since He Yan was reborn, he had interacted with Xiao Ju for so long. It wasn't that he hadn't seen Xiao Ju angry before, but when he was angry, he was also cold and indifferent. It was the first time Xiao Ju had directly released his anger like today. But why was he so angry? Was it because she did not call him when she was looking at the painting? I saw you bathing in there by chance. If you want to look at it first, then look at it first. Don't be angry, there's nothing good about this painting, the strokes are too strong and the characters are too ugly. If you like, there are many more paintings that are more beautiful than this. He Yan replied timidly, I'll find them for you. Xiao Ju was so angry that he almost vomited blood. He sneered, really? You've seen a lot of them? Not a lot. He Yan said, maybe, more than you. In his previous life, when he was He Rufei, many of his brothers in the tent secretly hid such treasure paintings. When they were bored at night, they would take them out and share them with everyone. He Yan was also forced to look at many of them. At first, she was ashamed and angry. Later, she became numb to it. In the end, she could comment on it without batting an eyelid. It had only been a few years. She was so proud of such unsightly words. She really did not know what was good for her. Xiao Ju sneered in his heart. He suddenly pushed her against the wall and placed one hand on her side. The man's body was on top of her and she could smell the familiar scent of the moon qilin. His gaze was as sharp as lightning, and there was a hint of frivolity at the corners of his eyes. His voice was hoarse and deep, and his dark eyes stared straight at her as he said lightly, "Then do you want to give it a try?" Chapter 132. Then do you want to try? The distance between them was a little too close. He Yen was startled at first, then stunned. When he crashed into the limpid autumn water, he felt his cheeks quickly become hot. He wanted to retreat, but his shoulders were restrained and he couldn't move. He could only raise his head from his arms and refuse stutteringly. Try what? You've seen so much, don't you want to try? He raised his eyebrows and leaned closer. His gaze fell on her lips, startling He Yen. The man's facial features were more refined and heroic than when he was young, with a kind of cold indulgence. This kind of person, when he was calm and indifferent, was like a flower on a high mountain. When he lazily curved his lips and even his gaze became hot, it was irresistible. He Yen said, "I don't want to." "Oh." He curved his lips and his tone became more dangerous. "If you don't try, how will you know how it is?" "This. You don't have to try," He Yen explained clumsily. "Actually, you'll understand after seeing more. It's the same thing. It's just that the details are different. And some of them are not suitable for ordinary people. They're all drawn for fun. There's really no need to try, just read." Xiaoju, fun. He Yen. Some people might be thirsty for knowledge. Xiaoju's eyes became cold and his smile became more playful. He said lightly, "Since you're so experienced, then you must try." He was getting closer and closer, forcing He Yen to retreat to the head of the bed. He tilted his head slightly and leaned over. His thin lips were about to fall on He Yen's lips. He Yen screamed, "Husband!" This scream of "husband" was so loud that it shocked Xiaoju. After a moment, he stopped and was only a little away from He Yen. He raised his eyebrows. "What are you doing?" "I'm still an unmarried girl," He Yen pleaded softly. "I'll get married in the future. It's not good for us to be like this." "What's wrong with that?" Xiaoju said calmly, "You and I have already seen the picture together. Looking at the picture is one thing, but actually doing it is another." He Yen begged, "Governor, please spare me this time. I will never dare to ask you to look at the map with me again." She thought that Xiaoju's thoughts were really hard to fathom. Wasn't it just looking at a picture and he wanted to make it real? Who would dare to look at pictures with him in the future? Something was going to happen. Xiaoju looked at her with a faint smile. "Are you scared now?" I'm scared." He Yen was very sensible. "I promise I won't ask the commander-in-chief to look at the map in the future." "You mean," he said unhurriedly, "you'll look for someone else?" "I won't look for others either." He Yen immediately said, "I won't look for myself either, really." She stared at him with her grape-like eyes, clear and bright, as if she was a student caught red-handed by her teacher. Xiaoju suddenly felt a little puzzled. He felt that his actions were very strange. He Yen could look at whatever she wanted. What did it have to do with him? Just because she called him father, did he have to worry about everything, no matter how big or small, like raising a daughter? But then again, how did her father raise his daughter? How could he raise such a strange person who did not know what shame was? He suddenly released He Yan's hand and glanced at the painting on the wall. It was difficult for Cui Yuji to be so meticulous. He even thought of the interesting things that happened last night for his nephew. However, there was really no use for it. He casually pulled the satin cloth from the small table and covered the picture on the wall. Then, he inserted 2 silver needles into the wall and firmly nailed the satin cloth. At this point, He Yen finally understood. It turned out that Xiaoju hated looking at this painting. Thinking about it, Second young Master Zhao's eyes were as pure as ice and pure as jade. This kind of filthy painting would definitely dirty his eyes. She was really particular. After he finished all this, he got up and walked to the side of the room. He found a mattress from the short yellow wooden cabinet and laid it on the soft bed in front of the window. The soft bed was for guests to sit in front of the window and enjoy the beautiful scenery outside while eating snacks and tea. He Yen saw this and was stunned for a moment. He asked, "Commander-in-Chief, are you sleeping here tonight? Otherwise?" He Yen hesitated. "Actually, you can sleep on the bed with me." Xiao Ju stopped arranging the mattress and looked at him. He said coldly, "I think you are very brave." "No, I know what you are worried about," He Yen said. "We only need 2 mattresses. When I was in Liangzhou, I also slept in a large shared bed. It was not a big deal for more than 10 people to sleep in one bed. Moreover, I believe in your character. You will not tarnish my reputation." Xiao Ju sneered. "But I don't believe in your character. I am afraid that you will tarnish my reputation." He Yen, she did not know how to respond. She saw Xiao Ju lay down after arranging the mattress. She thought for a moment, blew out the lamp, and lay down as well. In the room, only the moonlight outside the window shone on the floor in front of the table. It was covered with a layer of silver frost. When they were young in the Xianchang mansion, the 2 of them slept in the same room. They were quite far apart. He Yen slept alone in the same room because He Yuanliang had specially informed Shi Bao. Now that he was sleeping in the same room as Xiao Ju, he felt a little like he did in the past. She lay flat. The mattress under her was soft and warm. He Yen asked, "Are you asleep?" Xiao Ju did not answer. He Yen continued, "I don't think so." "They are." "Young master, let's talk." Xiao Ju still ignored her. "Why did we come to Jiang?" She only knew that they came to Jiang to accompany Xiao Ju. However, she did not know what they were going to do. In the dark night, Xiao Ju's voice sounded. "We are looking for someone." He Yen was stunned. He did not expect Xiao Ju to answer. He asked, "Who are you looking for?" "Chai Anshi." "Who is Chai Anshi?" The room was silent for a moment. Then, Xiao Ju said, "He is my father's subordinate." "Xiao Zhongwu's subordinate?" He Yen was stunned. During the Battle of Mingshui, Xiao Zhongwu's most trusted subordinates died in battle. Since Xiao Ju said that he was a subordinate, it sounded like he was a very trusted person. Could this person still be alive and in Jiang? Jiang was the territory of the vassals. There were very few people from the Central Plains who came here. Even if there were, they would just pass by and would not stay for long. Chai Anshi looked like he was hiding from someone in Jiang. Could it be that he was hiding from Xiao Ju? However, why would he hide from Xiao Ju? Xiao Ju was Xiao Zhongwu's son. He should be loyal to him. Perhaps a general's mind was especially sensitive in this aspect. He Yen immediately thought of something. Could it be that there was something wrong with Xiao Zhongwu's death during the battle? After all, Xiao Zhongwu's defeat during the Battle of Mingshui was too tragic. Everyone said that he was headstrong and self-opinionated. However, based on Xiao Zhongwu's past achievements, he was not a headstrong person. Perhaps Xiao Ju came here because of what happened back then. The person who knew about it was no longer around. However, Chai Anshi was still alive. It was indeed suspicious. He Yen thought for a moment and said, "We will definitely find this person." In the dark night, he seemed to hear Xiao Ju chuckle. He asked, "Why did you come to Jiang?" "Me?" He Yen was puzzled. "Didn't you ask me to come?" Xiao Ju snorted and said, "Even if I didn't ask you to come, you would still find a way to follow me, wouldn't you?" He Yan's heart skipped a beat. This person was too sensitive. She indeed had an ulterior motive. She still hoped to find Lu Buwang in Jiang. However, she would not say this to Xiao Ju. You're too suspicious. He Yan made up a story. This time, I came purely for you. As long as you need me, I will not hesitate to climb a mountain of swords or dive into a sea of fire. Xiao Ju was silent for a moment and said, flattery. He Yan said, what else can you say other than flattery? Big words. What else? Falling from the sky. What else? Deceiving the heavens and concealing the earth. He Yan was speechless. She said, young master, do you know that you are really childish now? Xiao Ju said, sleep. He no longer paid attention to her. The spring night was still chilly. For some reason, He Yan did not feel cold, perhaps because there was someone by his side tonight. He happily got into bed. The bed was warm, and he fell asleep in an instant. The next day, when He Yan woke up, Xiao Ju was no longer in the room. She was stunned for a moment. She guessed that the sky had just brightened, but Xiao Ju had actually woken up earlier than her. He Yan stood up, hurriedly washed up, and put on an outer robe. At a glance, he saw Xiao Ju sitting on the stone bench in the courtyard. A dirty wild cat was lying on the stone table in front of him, and it was eating the food in his hand. He Yan walked closer and saw that he had taken a plate of pastries from somewhere. He was pinching them into small pieces and feeding them to the wild cat in front of him. When the wild cat saw that someone had come, all of its fur stood up. It did not know which pond it had rolled in, but its fur was stained with dirty water, and it had congealed into small pieces. Why is there a cat here? He Yan asked. He wanted to touch it, but the cat immediately bared its teeth. He Yan retracted his hand and said, it's quite fierce. Xiao Ju glanced at her and said, I picked it up. The young man's fingers were long and slender, and he was very patient as he broke the pastries into small pieces. The cat was probably very good at judging people's looks. It was very gentle towards Xiao Ju, and it was eating while softly calling out, Mimi. Needless to say, it was quite beautiful. He Yan could not help but ask, young master, don't you love cleanliness the most? Phew, when he was with her, he despised her in every way, and even pulled up his sleeves to wipe the dust off. Why, when he was with a dirty wild cat, he became generous. It depends on the situation. Xiao Ju said slowly. He Yan thought to himself, what did he mean by depending on the situation? Did he mean that she was worse than a cat? As he was thinking, Xiao Ju finished feeding the cat the last piece. She patted the cat's head, and the cat was smart. It arched its body, jumped up the wall, and disappeared in a flash. He Yan stared blankly. At this time, Cui Jiao's voice sounded from outside, young master, young mistress, the kitchen has sent breakfast. He Yan felt hungry and said, let's go and eat something. Xiao Ju washed her hands and followed He Yan into the house. She saw Lin Shuanghe take out the silver needles from the food and said, eat it. I've tested it. It's not poisonous. After saying that, he whispered angrily, the difference between people is too big. Why can't we eat as much? He was now housekeeper Lin, but he could not eat with Xiao Ju and He Yan. He had to eat with Qi Wu and Fei Nu. He could not even taste it, in case someone found out. Xiao Ju said, scram. Lin Shuanghe scrammed and left. Heng Qiao stood behind He Yan. He Yan waved his hand and said, go and eat with Qi Wu and the others. Young master and I don't like to be served. I'll do it. Cui Jiao and Heng Qiao were stunned. They looked at Xiao Ju. Seeing that Xiao Ju did not say anything, Cui Jiao said, this servant understands. She pulled Heng Qiao and left. When they reached the door, Heng Qiao asked hesitantly, Cui Jiao, is it good for us to leave like this? Young mistress and young master don't usually want us to serve them. Are they not satisfied with us? That's not it. Cui Jiao was clever and said, perhaps they are from the capital and are different from Jiang. Moreover, I heard that young mistress and young master are newly married. They probably want to serve young master personally. This is called fun. At this moment, young mistress, who was supposed to personally serve young master, was eating a plum blossom bun with relish. The last time he ate so well was when he pretended to be his nephew and accompanied Xiaoju to Liangzhou City. However, at that time, the food was only the specialty of the inn. This time, it was different. Cui Yuji's status in Jiang was not low. Moreover, he was his nephew whom he had not seen for a long time. Therefore, he treated him with extra care. It was early in the morning. Look at the food on the table. There were assorted grilled meat, shisher milk, pheasant slices soup, fish maw stewed with ham, bird's nest shredded chicken soup. This morning's food is too oily, He Yan said as he took a bite of the 8-treasure wild duck. Xiaoju endured it and finally could not help but say, "Did I not feed you enough?" He Yan's mouth was full. Huh? He looked away in disgust. Do you have to eat like a reincarnated hungry ghost? But don't you think it's delicious? He Yan swallowed the food in his mouth. Xiaoju said mockingly, "Is that all you have? You're a young master and a commander-in-chief. You live like a prince. Of course, you've seen the world and don't think it's a big deal. We're soldiers. It's good enough that we can eat until we're full. How can you not say that it's good?" He Yan muttered, "You're a well-fed man and you don't know the suffering of a hungry man." He choked and gave up on reasoning with He Yan. He said lazily, "Whatever." He Yan looked at Xiaoju as he ate. He was amazed by his elegant table manners. Logically speaking, people like them who had been in the military camp for many years did not care about such etiquette. It did not matter if they were young masters or young masters in the past. When He Yan was eldest young master he did pay attention to his manners. However, when he was in a real battle, he could finish a biscuit in 2 or 3 bites and then get up to work. Who would care about his manners? He Yan did not believe that Xiaoju had never behaved like that before. However, after going through such a difficult time, he was able to return to being the second young master of the Xiao family. This was not something an ordinary person could do. At least, she had long forgotten how to be a young master. After the meal, Cui Jiao and Heng Qiao came over to help He Yan dress up. Cui Yuji was going to hold a banquet in his residence at noon. He had also invited many famous nobles in Jiang City. The purpose of this banquet was to make Xiaoju proud. Therefore, he could not be careless. Xiaoju went out to look for Lin Shuanghe. He Yan sat in front of the dressing mirror. Heng Qiao took out the mermaid gauze from the box and asked He Yan, "Madam, do you want to wear this today?" He Yan thought for a moment. There were many people coming today. It would be safer to wear the most expensive one. He nodded and said, "Okay." The 2 maidservants began to get busy. He Yan was usually the most impatient to do these kinds of things. Sometimes, he even felt that doing such delicate work for a woman was more tiring than doing it for a man. Just combing her hair, putting on makeup, choosing jewelry and shoes, and even tucking her hair in to make it look cute was not an easy task. As she combed her hair, she fell asleep. He Yan was woken up by Heng Qiao. Heng Qiao said, "Madam." He Yan opened his eyes and asked in a daze, "Done?" "Done." Cui Jiao smiled at the side. Her eyes were filled with amazement. "Madam, you look really good." He Yan said, "Thank you." She raised her head to look at herself in the mirror and was stunned for a moment. Her previous female clothing was still elegant and simple. However, this mermaid gauze could be considered charming and gorgeous. Cui Jiao and Heng Qiao must have put in a lot of effort today. They did not even dare to make a mistake in their makeup. He Yan looked at her unfamiliar self in the mirror and was slightly absent-minded. This time, she did not even look like the real Lady He. Cui Jiao smiled and pushed the door open, saying, "Young master is next door." This servant will call young master over to take a look. He Yen said, no, before he could finish the word, must, Cui Jiao left happily. He Yen stood up and suddenly hesitated. She was still thinking about how to face Xiao Ju in a more natural manner when she heard a casual voice behind her, done? He Yen looked back. The young girl was thinking about something. Her clear eyes were a little confused, and her expression was a little hazy. She was originally beautiful and delicate. Originally, the heroic spirit between her eyebrows was deliberately covered by makeup, making her appear pure and moving. Her face was charming and her black hair was simply tied up, obediently hanging on her shoulders. Her body looked very thin and petite. Her pale white silk embroidered dress made her look even more graceful. The dress hid a very faint hidden flower. When the sun shone through, it looked like the scales of a mermaid, glowing with a faint blue-purple gold powder. Her entire being was enveloped in a layer of magnificent colors, as if she was a legendary mermaid who had just climbed onto the shore and had just arrived in the mortal world. Xiao Ju's gaze paused. Lin Shuanghe's voice came from behind, I want to see what a dress that costs 100 gold coins looks like. Let me see, let me see. His noise suddenly disappeared when he saw He Yen. Only amazement remained in his eyes. Qi Wu and Fei Nu, who had followed closely behind, also saw. Fei Nu was fine, but Qi Wu seemed to have suffered a huge blow. This person can actually be so beautiful when dressed as a woman? They couldn't tell that he was a man at all. It was too scary. He Yen was at a loss as to what to do. He felt like he had become a monkey on the stage for everyone to admire. He grabbed the corner of his clothes and said pitifully, isn't this a little too much? Wasn't it just attending a banquet? Was there a need to dress up like this? Wasn't it too grand? It would have been better if she didn't make this expression. Once she did this, her eyebrows seemed to frown, and she suddenly looked delicate and pitiful. Xiao Ju said indescribably, don't talk with this expression. But. Lin Shuanghe became excited, this is great, it's just right. This dress that costs 100 gold coins is indeed a dress that costs 100 gold coins. It's really extraordinary. This money was well spent. Cui Jiao was happy, isn't that right, madam? This servant said that it's really beautiful. When He Yen was a man, he was often praised as mighty, brave, and boundlessly handsome. He had never experienced being praised for his looks as a woman, so he was a bit shy. For a moment, he didn't know how to respond, so he cupped his fists and said loudly, you flatter me. Xiao Ju, Lin Shuanghe, the rest of the people, Lin Shuanghe said. It's beautiful, but madam, sometimes you don't have to be so forthright. Xiao Ju sneered, you should speak with that expression just now. Otherwise, I might forget that you're actually a woman. He Yen, all right, he forgot himself for a moment. At noon, the entire Cui residence became lively. Carriages continuously stopped at the entrance of the Cui residence. Madams, young misses, young masters, and old masters all entered the residence. Jiang was a territory belonging to a vassal. The current princess, Mu Hongjin, grew up together with Cui Yuji. Cui Yuji was Mu Hongjin's confidant and was also the first lieutenant of Jiang. Everyone had to give him face. When they heard that Cui Yuji had found his long-lost nephew, they specially prepared a banquet for his return. Everyone wanted to take a look. The Cui residence was huge. There was a lake at the back of the residence. Jiang had a lot of water and the water was gentle. In the middle of the lake, there was a long pavilion in the middle of the lake. Today's banquet was held in the pavilion in the middle of the lake. In the pavilion, the servants had already prepared a few long and short tables. The banquet on the tables was also very sumptuous. Some of the distinguished guests had already taken their seats. Cui Yuji, the master of the residence, had yet to leave the residence. He didn't have a wife and only had 4 concubines. Therefore, the only one who helped to greet the guests was the old housekeeper, Zhong Fu. Next to a woman on the right side of the pavilion sat a young girl dressed in pink. This young girl was delicate and charming. Her skin was slightly darker, so she had put on more makeup. This made her look less barbaric and more melancholy. She frowned impatiently and asked, "It's already so late. Why aren't young Master Qiao and his wife here yet? What's the hurry?" The woman next to her, who was probably her mother, smiled and comforted her. "The banquet hasn't started yet. Moreover, Lord Cui hasn't arrived yet. How can young Master Qiao show himself first? Min, are you hungry?" Yan Min, who was the young girl dressed in pink, frowned and said, "I'm not hungry. It's natural for us to wait for Cui Zhongqi. However, I heard that Cui Zhongqi's nephew was adopted by a merchant after he left Jiang City. Now, he's just a merchant. How can a merchant who stinks of money be worthy of our bitter wait? Does he really think he's a big shot?" After all, the noble families in Jiang all knew that Xiao Huanqing was a merchant. Although they came to the banquet today because of Cui Yuezhi, they didn't think highly of Xiao Huanqing in private. They just wouldn't say it out loud like Yan Min, Shoo, Madame Yan hurriedly covered her mouth. "Don't talk nonsense. No matter what, he's still Lord Cui's nephew. I think he's spoiling you too much. That's why you're so lawless. Didn't you see that Lord Cui set up a banquet today to welcome young Master Qiao? Do you think Lord Cui will be happy if you say that young Master Qiao is bad? So what?" Yan Min said disdainfully, "Lord Cui and my father are friends. He won't blame me." "Oh you." Madame Yan wanted to stop her beloved daughter from speaking without thinking, but she couldn't bear to really scold her. Yan Min's beautiful eyes turned. She thought for a while and said disapprovingly, "I think that maybe he hasn't seen such a big event before. He's hiding somewhere and doesn't dare to come out. He's waiting for Cui Zhongqi to help lead the way." Chapter 133. Yan Min and Madame Yan's conversation was overheard by a lady dressed in green. This lady was slightly younger than Yan Min and was more beautiful and slender. She asked, "I heard that young Master Qiao's wife is a famous talented lady in Hu province. Is she pretty?" Yan Min smiled and said ambiguously, "Even if she's a famous talented lady, she can't compare to Jiangza Xiu." Ling Xiu was the beloved daughter of Ling Diani from the Imperial Residence's record office. She could compose poems at the age of 5 and was famous in Jiang at the age of 7. She was proficient in zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting. She was delicate and beautiful. She was outstanding in Jiang City where most women were beautiful and bold. When she heard that there was another talented lady from Hu province, she wanted to compete with her. When another lady heard this, she covered her mouth and sneered. "Ah Xiu, you don't have to compare yourself to a merchant's wife. You don't have to lower yourself. Maybe the title of a talented lady is just a lie. You're just putting on a golden coat for yourself." Ling Xiu laughed too. "If young Master Qiao really stays in Jiang, he won't be a merchant in the future. A merchant is a merchant. The stench of money is in his bones. It's not something that can be covered by a change of clothes." Yan Min's tone was scornful. "He's not elegant after all." The ladies laughed together. At this moment, someone said, "Cui Zhongqi is here." Everyone looked up and saw a middle-aged man walking over from the end of the pavilion by the lake. This man was round and had a broad body. He looked simple and honest, and his smile was amiable, like the Maitreya Buddha. He wore a black martial attire and was in high spirits. When he reached the entrance of the pavilion, he handed the long spear in his hand to his subordinate and said with a smile, "Everyone is here." Everyone quickly stood up and greeted Cui Yuezhi. In Jiang, Cui Yuezhi was second only to one person. Therefore, everyone in the imperial residence had to give him face. Cui Yuezhi turned around and asked Zhong Fu, are Huanqing and the rest here? I've sent someone to invite them. Zhong Fu smiled. They should be here soon. Yesterday, Cui Yuezhi had a discussion with the princess in the imperial residence. He accidentally drank a few cups and stayed in the imperial residence. This morning, he had a quarrel with the group of stubborn old men. He had not seen his nephew until now. He touched his chin and said, I wonder how my nephew looks like. Does he look like Big Brother? How similar are you to me? Zhong Fu wanted to say something but stopped himself. To be honest, apart from his gender, that young Master Qiao had nothing in common with the Cui family. I heard that the child was raised in a merchant's family. Cui Yuezhi was a little worried. Although I don't mind these things, the nobles in the city value status the most. I just hope that they don't belittle themselves. Zhong Fu still wanted to say something, but at the end of the pavilion, a servant of the Cui family came over and said, Young Master Qiao, Madam Qiao has arrived. Everyone subconsciously looked up. At the end of the pavilion, beside the lake, two people walked side by side. It was a man and a woman. Both of them were very young. The man was very tall and his body was as straight as jade. He wore a dark green embroidered robe with black and gold pythons. He was very elegant. His fine black hair was tied up with a green jade hairpin. His eyes were exquisite and bright. The woman standing beside him had a bright smile on her face. She was bright and adorable. It was unknown what material her clothes were made of. At first, it looked like an ordinary plain white, but as she walked, it glowed with shades of blue, purple, and gold. It was dreamy and very moving. The two of them were both outstanding in appearance and bearing, and they were strangely compatible. When they stood together, it was an indescribable feeling of being a perfect match. For a moment, everyone in the pavilion was stunned. Was this a merchant who was reeking of money? Could a merchant have such extraordinary charm? Cui Yuezhi was also stunned. Was this his elder brother's son? His elder brother's appearance was 70% similar to his. Not to mention handsome, just the word slender was difficult to achieve. This was a little too good-looking. Yan Min was stunned. Suddenly, her face became extremely ugly. She knew these two people. This woman was the one who embarrassed her in the embroidery workshop that day. This man was the one who mocked her for her dark skin. After she returned to the residence, she couldn't take it lying down. She didn't expect that these two people were the nephew and niece-in-law that Cui Yuezhi found. She was so angry that she wanted to vomit blood. At the side, Ling Xiu's gaze fell on Xiaoju. She was a little dazed. She only muttered, there's actually such a good-looking man in this world. Jiang was different from Shuajing. The female lead was beautiful and bold, while the male lead was masculine and brave. It was probably because things were rare that was precious. Just like how a talented woman like Ling Xiu was highly sought after in Jiang, a handsome, noble, and elegant man like Xiaoju was really rare. All the unmarried women at the banquet stared at him like wolves staring at meat. He Yan also noticed these covetous gazes. He secretly cursed in his heart. Xiaoju's face really attracted bees and butterflies wherever he went. Lin Shuanghe followed behind the two of them. At first, everyone thought that he was Xiaoju's relative or friend. When they found out that he was the housekeeper, they were also shocked. They probably didn't expect that the conditions to be a housekeeper in Huzhou would be so harsh. Cui Yuezhi arranged for Xiaoju and He Yan to sit on the right side of his long seat. Huanqing. Cui Yuezhi looked at him with a smile. I really didn't expect you to be so good-looking. He really made the Cui family proud. In Jiang City, no one was more outstanding than the young man in front of him. When Cui Yuezhi was young, he was ridiculed behind his back for being a round ball. He was vulgar and fat. Before Qiao Huanqing returned, he heard rumors in Jiang City and was waiting to see another little fat ball. Who knew? He really made them proud. The Chui family wiped away their shame. Good. Xiao Zhu nodded calmly. Chui Yuezhi's gaze fell on He Yan again. He smiled and said, "Niece-in-law looks young too. How old are you this year?" He Yan said, "Almost 17. 17 is good." The more Chui Yuezhi looked at He Yan, the more satisfied he was. His nephew and niece-in-law were both good-looking. Their children in the future would be even more good-looking. The Chui family's bloodline would definitely be stronger with each generation. When he thought of this, he felt very gratified. He even wanted to go to the ancestral hall and burn 2 sticks of incense for his elder brother. Today's banquet in the middle of the lake is specially held to welcome the two of you. Chui Yuezhi smiled and said, "Do you think it's all right?" Xiao Zhu said, "It's very good. Thank you, uncle." The word uncle immediately pleased Chui Yuezhi. He smiled so widely that his face was about to burst. He said to the crowd, "As you can see, this is the only son of my deceased elder brother. He's my nephew." The guests immediately raised their cups and complimented Chui Yuezhi with things like extraordinary appearance and profound elegance. They also congratulated Chui Yuezhi for reuniting with his family and so on. Chui Yuezhi was even happier. He ordered the servants to serve the dishes and the banquet began. There was no custom in Jiang for men and women to sit at separate tables. The long tables were arranged according to their gender. Chui Yuezhi asked Xiao Zhu in detail about the past few years. As they talked, the topic shifted to He Yan. "I heard that my nephew and niece-in-law just got married not long ago." "We got married in October last year in Hu district," Xiao Zhu said calmly, "less than half a year ago." Chui Yuezhi replied with an "oh." He said regretfully, "It's a pity that I didn't see it with my own eyes." He patted Xiao Zhu's shoulder. "If I could see you get married with my own eyes, I would die without regrets." "What does your family do?" Chui Yuezhi asked. "Hu district is too far from Jiang. It's not easy to find out about many things." He Yan answered according to what he had said before, "I'm only from an ordinary family." "Thank you for thinking so highly of me, young master." An ordinary family? Everyone had different expressions on their faces. This was a commoner's family. The world always thought that although Qiao Huanqing was born into a merchant family, he was still considered rich. Money could make the devil turn millstones. Moreover, he was so outstanding. If he married the daughter of a minor official, it would be more than enough. However, he married Wen Yuyan, who was from an ordinary family, who had neither money nor power. Why? If he liked Wen Yuyan's beauty, he could have just asked her to be his concubine. Why did she have to be his wife? The young girl's gazes towards He Yan immediately carried traces of envy and jealousy. Ling Xiu's gaze shifted slightly and landed on Xiao Zhu's face. The young man was handsome to begin with. At this moment, he was sitting lazily. However, due to his occasional indifference, he looked even more attractive. He was comparable to all the men in Jiang. She looked at He Yan again. She was only the daughter of an ordinary family. How could she be compared to her in terms of appearance and status? A trace of unwillingness surfaced in her heart. Wen Yuyan was not worthy of Qiao Huanqing. She was the only one who deserved to stand side by side with Qiao Huanqing. She stood up and said softly, "Today, Lord Chui has found his family. This is a good thing worth celebrating. I'm not talented, but I'm willing to play a song for Lord Chui to congratulate you." After she finished speaking, her gaze swept past Xiao Zhu and she revealed a shy smile. The young men in the banquet were overjoyed when they heard this. They stared at Ling Xiu with sparkling eyes. Jiang City's young ladies had always been bold and confident. If they had outstanding talent, it would not be embarrassing to show it in front of everyone. However, Ling Xiu was different from the others. She did not like to take the initiative to show off. Even at a banquet, she would use all sorts of excuses and would only agree when she had no choice. However, it was the first time that she took the initiative like today. Moreover, it was her best zither skill. This made everyone look forward to it. Cui Yuezhi was also very happy. He waved his hand and said, "Good. Ah Xiu, you've opened our eyes today. If you play well, Uncle will give you a big gift." Lord Ling and Madam Ling smiled. They were already used to such glorious things. After all, the entire Jiang city knew that Ling Xiu was unparalleled in talent and beauty. The servant quickly brought a zither. This zither was also emerald in color. It was as green as the grass and trees in spring. She was also wearing a light green gauze dress. She really looked like a charming spirit in spring. Her slender fingers, bathed in incense, gently plucked the zither strings. She was playing Late Spring. The spring breeze blew the horse-wooling, In the warm West Lake in March, the strings touched the water and the orioles in the flower market. I don't know if the music will reach here. She frowns as she passes the mountains. Her hair is piled up in the willows, the sound of the zither was pleasing to the ear. It brushed past people's ears, making them feel intoxicated. He Yan was also the same. He only felt that this young lady's hands were really skillful. Compared to his own movements of plucking the zither, if he was not careful, he could pluck the strings and break them, not to mention playing a complete song. She was really amazing. She was intoxicated by the music. When she glanced over, she saw that Xiao Ju was unmoved. He only lowered his head and drank his tea. She could not help but touch him and whispered, "Why aren't you listening?" Xiao Ju replied, "I'm listening." "Then why don't you look like it's very nice to listen to?" "What do you mean by, very nice to listen to?" He Yan pointed to the other side with his mouth. "Like them." The young men present, and even some of the older young masters, were staring at Ling Xiu in a daze. It was as if they were drowning in the sound of the zither. Their eyes were flashing with admiration. Xiao Ju retracted his gaze and said coldly, "Boring. You're really hard to please." He Yan muttered softly, "I think it's very nice to listen to. She's also very pretty. If I can get to know such a girl, I'll definitely be very happy." "Very happy?" Xiao Ju suddenly smiled. He looked at him and said with interest, "I hope you'll be as happy from now on." He Yan did not understand what he meant. He only said, "Of course I'll be happy from now on." While they were talking, Ling Xiu had finished her song. She looked at Xiao Ju and saw that Xiao Ju was talking to He Yan with a smile. He seemed to be teasing her. Ling Xiu saw this scene and her heart sank. She was even more dissatisfied. She stood up and the people around her praised her. Cui Yuezhi also smiled and said, "Ah Xiu, your zither song lingers on. But the sound still lingers in my ears, 9 days." No one would deny her zither music. Ling Xiu looked at Xiao Ju again, but he lowered his head and drank his tea. He did not even look at her. Instead, Wen Yuyan, beside him, looked at her with a smile, as if he was mocking her. Ling Xiu's smile was a little stiff. After a while, she said humbly, "Ah Xiu doesn't dare to show off in front of an expert. I heard that Madame Qiao from Huzhou is a famous talented woman. Her zither skills are superb. Since we're fated to be here today, can you let Ah Xiu experience it?" After saying that, she looked at He Yan with anticipation. Let everyone see how exquisite Madame's zither skills are. He Yan was watching happily. When he heard that, he was stunned. Why was she suddenly mentioned? When Yu Yan's zither skills were superb? Was that so? Why didn't she know? He Yan looked at Lin Shuanghe for help. This was her husband. Lin Shuanghe turned his head away as if nothing had happened. He pretended to talk to the people around him. He did not intend to help her. "I think, that's not necessary." He Yan said, "Miss Ah Xiu's zither skills are already very good. I don't need to do anything more." How can you say that it's unnecessary? Ling Xiu looked at He Yan with sincerity. Ah, Xiu really wants to listen to Madame's zither music. He Yan was speechless. Her zither music? Her zither music could drive away evil spirits and calm the house. It was not for appreciation. When Ling Xiu saw He Yan's awkward expression, she could not help but feel proud. She thought that the rumors about Wen Yuyan's talents were probably just a pretense. If she could make a fool of herself in front of everyone today, she would become the joke of Jiang City. Yan Min, who had always been at odds with Ling Xiu, could not help but gloat when she saw this scene. Previously at the embroidery workshop, although it was Xiao Ju who said those sarcastic words, Yan Min, blamed He Yan for it. A woman who was admired by such an outstanding man was always particularly eye-catching. Especially when she did not look special, she made people feel that she did not live up to her reputation. He Yan looked at Xiao Ju who was beside him. Xiao Ju was drinking tea leisurely with a calm expression. No wonder, he said, I hope you can be as happy from now on. Did he already guess that this would happen? How did he know? This kind of strange thought was unpredictable. How could Xiao Ju see through it? Did she have the ability to read minds? He Yan muttered in his heart. He reached under the table and secretly tugged at Xiao Ju's sleeve. He whispered, Can you help me? Xiao Ju said calmly, Didn't you learn it before? I didn't learn it, He Yan said, Lin Shuanghe taught me before. He even said that I was already very good. But when I heard this girl play just now, I feel that my playing is not quite right. His words were tactful, but in fact, it was not just not quite right. It was ridiculously wrong. You don't know anything about zither, chess, calligraphy, or painting. He said, Other than swindling, what else do you know? He Yan said hesitantly, Breaking a boulder on my chest. But she couldn't just show others how to break a boulder on her chest. Xiao Ju, if I expose myself, we're all finished. Help me, He Yan pleaded, Commander-in-Chief, Young Master, Second Young Master Xiao, husband. Xiao Ju was obviously disgusted by this husband. He said, Speak properly. He Yan, then I'll take it that you agree. The two of them spoke very softly. In the eyes of the crowd, He Yan seemed to be acting spoiled to Xiao Ju. Xiao Ju was very indulgent. Cui Yuezhi smiled and said, What? Does Yu Yan not want to play the zither? To be honest, after we got married, I made a promise with my wife. My wife's zither skills are superb, and she can only play for me. Xiao Ju said calmly, So today, I'm afraid I can't do as you wish. Everyone was stunned. He Yan was also stunned. He never thought that Xiao Ju would use this reason. But thinking about it, this reason was very good. After all, if he used other reasons once, there would be a next time. This reason would also prevent the next time. After all, there was no reason to break a promise. Ling Xiu's expression was stiff. She looked at the young lady sitting beside the young man. In the end, she couldn't take it anymore. She smiled and said, But today is the day that young master and Master Cui are reunited. There are so many people here, it's not a big deal to break the promise once. My promise with my wife cannot be changed. Xiao Ju looked at her calmly, You must listen. I can do it for you. At the end of the sentence, his tone became cold. He was already impatient. Ling Xiu was also shocked by his coldness. For a moment, she didn't dare to speak. Cui Yuezhi smiled and said, Huanqing also knows how to play the zither. I only know a little. Then I want to hear Huanqing play the zither today. Cui Yuezhi laughed loudly, My Cui family has never produced such an elegant person. Zhong Fu, wipe the zither again. No need. Xiao Ju said, Butler Lin, bring the evening fragrance zither. Xiao Ju was very particular about the things he used. He Yan meant that he knew. But in the eyes of those who didn't know, especially Ling Xiu, it was as if Xiaoju didn't want to use the same zither as her because he didn't like her. She couldn't help but bite her lips. She reluctantly returned to her seat. Lin Shuanghe quickly brought over Xiaoju's evening fragrance zither. He Yan still remembered this evening fragrance zither. Before she went to the Yangzhou guards to pretend to be Qing Li Su, she was drunk and crushed this zither. Xiaoju even brought it to Yangzhou to get it repaired. Just by looking at it, she knew that it was very expensive. Fortunately, Xiaoju didn't ask her to pay for it. Otherwise, she wouldn't be able to pay it back even if she sold herself. She vaguely remembered that she had heard Xiaoju play the zither. But she was half drunk and her memory was blurry. Now that she saw this zither, the memories of her drunken stupor flooded her mind. The man sat in front of the zither, burning incense and bathing his hands. Unlike Ling Xiu's deliberate playing, he was much more lazy and casual. His movements were very natural. If he wasn't someone who played the zither for a long time, he wouldn't be able to do it so smoothly. At a certain moment, He Yan seemed to have seen the dissolute youth lying on the loquat tree in the Xian Chang dojo. But he had grown up. The zither strings were plucked. His hands were slender and had distinct joints. They were very good-looking. When they fell on the zither strings, a pleasant sound flowed out. This sound was different from the late spring that Ling Xiu had just played. It was different from the cheerful late spring. It was quiet with a hint of melancholy, like a river illuminated by the bright moon, flowing into the distance. He was playing River Moon. This song was very difficult and tested one's zither skills. He Yan had heard someone play it before. It was her master, Lu Buwang. However, when Lu Buwang played it, he was more reminiscing or lost. The feeling of Xiaoju playing it was different from that of Lu Buwang. When a handsome man did elegant things, he was always particularly eye-catching. Even Ling Xiu, who had just been frightened by Xiaoju, or Yan Min, who had been mocked by Xiaoju before, and even more people, couldn't help but be immersed in his music at this moment. He Yan was no exception. When he played the zither, his disc wing-like eyelashes drooped down, covering the indifference in his eyes, leaving only gentleness. His facial features were excessively handsome, and his thin lips were slightly pursed, making him look restrained and charming. He Yan thought that it was indeed difficult to see someone more outstanding and good-looking than him in this world. When the song ended, Xiaoju withdrew his hands. Everyone stared at him and was silent for a moment. If it weren't for his River Moon, Ling Xiu's Late Spring should be very outstanding. But after comparison, Ling Xiu's zither skills seemed mediocre and not so amazing. Both men and women stared at Xiaoju, and there was only one confusion in their hearts at this moment. Wasn't it said that Xiao Huanqing, who came from Huzhou, was adopted by a merchant's family? But now it seemed that the information was wrong. Such a person didn't seem to be raised by a merchant's family. Cui Yuezhi's face became even more proud. The more he looked at Xiaoju, the more satisfied he was. He laughed and said, "Huanqing, your song stunned us all." Previously, Her Highness always said that Xiu's zither skills were the best in Jiang City. The next time I bring you to the prince's mansion, Her Highness will definitely praise you if she hears your music. When everyone heard this, they all had different thoughts. Since Cui Yuezhi mentioned the princess, it meant that he wanted to bring Xiao Huanqing into the prince's mansion. If that was the case, they couldn't treat him as an ordinary merchant. Xiaoju smiled slightly and glanced at He Yan with his deep eyes. He said calmly, "I've embarrassed myself. To be honest, my zither skills are not even 1/10 of Madame's." "Really?" Cui Yuezhi looked at He Yan in surprise. "How good must it be?" He Yan blushed. It was quite embarrassing. Chapter 134. After Xiaoju finished playing the zither and received everyone's praise, she returned to her seat. After that, He Yan no longer had the mood to eat heartily. Who knew if there would be other people coming over to see her other talents? What if they wanted her to write poems? She couldn't just say, I have an agreement with my husband. She sat down nervously all the way to the end of the table. Fortunately, nothing else happened. After eating and drinking, everyone dispersed. He Yen followed Xiaoju out. It was only at this time that he was able to speak with Cui Yuji alone. Cui Yuji's oldest concubine walked beside He Yen, slightly behind Cui Yuji and Xiaoju. This concubine was older than He Yen. She looked gentle and honest, and her surname was Wei. Concubine Wei said, young master is really good to young mistress. He Yen was stunned. Just as he was about to ask, why do you say that, he thought about it and said with a smile, yes, my husband loves me very much. He usually listens to me and is always on my side. I also feel that I am really lucky in my previous life to be able to find such a good husband in this life. Concubine Wei laughed and said, everyone says that the women of Jiang are straightforward. I think young mistress is the one who has something to say. He Yen laughed in his heart. If he gave Xiaoju the title of excessively doting on wife, wouldn't she be able to use this title to do whatever she wanted in Jiang? Xiaoju probably didn't expect that she would dig a hole for herself. As they spoke, the two of them had already entered the main hall of the residence. They didn't know which concubine of Cui Yuji's had already prepared hot tea and was waiting for them to enter. Cui Yuji sat down on a chair and waved his hand, all of you are dismissed. The concubines and servants all left. He smiled and said, Huanqing, Yuyan, sit. Although Cui Yuji was a cavalry officer, he didn't put on any airs. He looked no different from a soldier in the army. He looked honest and kind, but he had a pair of bright and sharp eyes. They were like a blunt and heavy saber. When the saber was unsheathed, it was terrifying. Xiaoju and He Yen sat down on the chairs beside him. Yesterday, I wanted to come back and pick you up, but Her Highness the Princess held a banquet and couldn't come back. It's only today that we meet. He carefully observed Xiaoju for a while, then sighed and said, just now at the banquet, I only thought that you looked good. Now that I look carefully, you and my dead big brother do have some similarities. He Yen, he looks similar to me as well. Cui Yuezhi said, as expected of a member of my Cui family. He Yen, Xiaoju nodded. When you were born, I even carried you. At that time, you were only the size of 2 of my fists. Maybe only 1 of my fists. Cui Yuezhi said, Big brother couldn't bear to let me touch you. Later, you were taken away. His eyes dimmed. Big brother and sister-in-law missed you before they died. If they could see you being so outstanding today, they would be very happy. Xiaoju was silent. Cui Yuezhi laughed. Look at me. Why would I talk about these unhappy things? What a bummer. Huanqing, Yuyan, you came at the right time. In a few days, it will be the spring equinox. Jiang's Water God Festival will be held. You must join in the fun. I guarantee that you won't want to leave. He Yen was surprised. Spring equinox? What? Cui Yuezhi said, is there something wrong? No, no. He Yen laughed. It's just that my birthday is also the spring equinox. A few days later. What a coincidence. Really? Cui Yuezhi was also surprised for a moment. Then, he laughed. It seems that Yu Yan and Jiang are fated. Your birthday coincides with the Water God Festival. Huanqing, when the time comes, you must celebrate Yu Yan's birthday. Xiaoju glanced at her and said, okay. They chatted for a while more. Then, Cui Yuezhi stood up and said, Huanqing, Yuyan, come with me to the ancestral hall to offer incense to big brother and sister-in-law. You haven't seen each other for many years. If they know that Huanqing is married now, they will be very happy. He Yen and Xiaoju followed him to the ancestral hall. After Cui Yuezhi offered incense, it was already late. Cui Yuezhi asked the servants to bring them back to their rooms so that they could rest early. When tomorrow arrived, they would go sightseeing in Jiang City. When the two of them returned to their rooms, He Yan impatiently sat down on the bed and said, "I'm so tired. I've been sitting upright for the whole day. Pretending to be a woman is really not something that humans can do. Even the daily training in the martial arts field is much easier than this. Pretending to be a woman." Xiao Zhu chuckled. "It seems like you really don't think of yourself as a woman." He Yan was also very helpless. He thought that this couple that Xiao Zhu found was also a talented woman. If she wanted to pretend to be the daughter of a military officer, or the girl who helps the docks move firewood for sure too, it would be perfect. Xiao Zhu took off her outer garment and placed it on the wooden table next to the sofa. He Yan sat up. "I really have to thank you for today. If it wasn't for your help, something big would have happened. Didn't I spoil my wife too much? Didn't I do everything for your sake?" Second young master Zhao's voice carried a hint of sarcasm. "That's what I should do." "He Yan, did you hear that?" Although it was all a lie, it was still very embarrassing for Xiao Zhu to hear it. She smiled and said, "I just wanted to make our relationship seem more loving and real." "Young master, please don't be angry." Just as they were talking, someone knocked on the door. He Yan said, "Come in." Cui Jiao and Heng Qiao each carried a basket of food and placed the plates on the table one by one. He Yan was startled and asked, "I didn't ask anyone to make food." "I asked." Xiao Zhu said, "Leave it here and go out." Cui Jiao and Heng Qiao obeyed and left the room. He Yan asked curiously, "Didn't you eat enough? You were at the banquet just now." Xiao Zhu sneered. "I wonder who was the one who couldn't sit still because of Ling Xiu. He was so frightened that he didn't even eat." He said, "Promising." He Yan muttered, "You found out." Xiao Zhu, "Yes, everyone found out." "Is it that obvious?" He Yan was very suspicious, but when he saw the food on the table, he immediately became happy. He said, "So these are specially for me?" "Thank you, young master." "Young master, you're too kind. There's no one better than you in the world. Don't say any more." Xiao Zhu frowned slightly. "It makes me sick." He Yan was already used to his way of speaking. He pulled him to the table and sat down. "Just treat it as supper. You can eat with us." "I'm not eating." "Eat, eat." He Yan pulled his sleeve and didn't let him go. He gave him a pair of chopsticks. "Look, there are 2 pairs of chopsticks here. They were originally prepared for 2 people. I can't finish them alone. Young master, please help me." Xiao Zhu seemed to have heard a joke. He said lightly, "Lady, he might have underestimated his good appetite. Although I have a good appetite, I'm not a glutton." He Yan said, "Besides, haven't you heard of the saying, a feast for the eyes? I could eat 3 bowls of rice, but after seeing young master's good looks, I can eat 5 bowls." Xiao Zhu choked for a moment. "Are you a pig? Don't speak so harshly." He Yan said as she pushed a plate of shrimp seeds with winter bamboo shoots and 3 gourd rolls in front of him. "Don't you like to eat these?" "Eat." Xiao Zhu was stunned. After a moment, he looked up at her. "How did you know?" He Yan stuffed a piece of 1,000-layer steamed cake into her mouth. "I saw you eat twice during breakfast. During lunch, you did it again. You won't touch anything you don't like. I guess you like it. But you're strange. Why do you like to eat vegetarian food? Are all rich people so particular?" She thought to herself. No wonder his waist was so thin. Xiao Zhu didn't answer her. He just lowered his head and ate slowly. He Yan didn't care about him. When she was young, she wanted to be a man. Because she was afraid of being exposed, she especially liked to study the details. After all, the details determine success or failure. She carefully observed all the men in the He family. At one time, some people even thought that he had a mental problem. Later, when he was in the army, it was better. After all, he had been a man for many years and already had experience. If she really wanted to observe a person, she would be able to observe very carefully. Moreover, Xiao Ju was now with her. It was too easy for her to know what he liked to eat and what he disliked to eat. Is your birthday really after the spring equinox? He Yan was eating happily when Xiao Ju suddenly asked. She paused for a moment, but didn't show it on her face. She said indifferently, "How is that possible? I just said it casually. What if Master Cui wants to give me a birthday gift? Wouldn't I take the opportunity to make a lot of money?" Xiao Ju snorted. Liar. How am I a liar? He Yan took an inch and wanted a mile. She boldly retorted. I think young master was the one who pretended to be perfect at the banquet today. You fooled everyone. What, I have an agreement with my wife. Ha ha ha, young master, to be honest, I didn't expect to hear such words from you. Xiao Ju calmly looked at He Yan's teasing. When she was done laughing, he asked, Is it very funny? It is very funny. He nodded. Then you can deal with it yourself in the future, Madam Chiao. He Yan couldn't laugh anymore. She said, Young master, I just said it casually. Please don't take it to heart. Xiao Ju ignored her and drank the soup unhurriedly. Stingy. She said, You are so stingy that it makes people gasp in amazement. Xiao Ju was still unmoved. He Yan rolled her eyes and softened her voice. Husband, this concubine was wrong. Please forgive this concubine's rudeness. This concubine won't dare to do it again. Husband, husband. Xiao Ju couldn't take it anymore. Shut up. He said, You'd better speak properly. He Yan understood that the cold and emotionless military governor Xiao was someone who was amenable to coaxing but not coercion. She laughed loudly. Her laughter traveled to the room next door. Fei Nu and Qi Wu, who were playing cards with Lin Shuanghe, raised their heads at the same time. Qi Wu sighed and said, To actually go to such an extent to put on an act, the governor is really too hardworking. That He Yan is the same. He practically thinks of himself as a woman. If they are like this, what reason do we have not to work hard? Fei Nu was speechless. Lin Shuanghe heard this and also held back his laughter. Yes. Indeed, they are very hardworking. At night, one person slept on the bed and the other slept on the side of the couch. The next morning, He Yan woke up slightly later. When he woke up, he saw Xiao Ju standing at the door talking to Fei Nu and Qi Wu. He Yan washed up and Cui Jiao and Heng Qiao brought breakfast to the kitchen. He Yan said to Xiao Ju, Young master, it's time to eat. You eat by yourself. Xiao Ju said. I have something to do today and will not be in the residence. You and Lin Shuanghe stay in the residence. Don't run around. Are you going out? What are you going to do? He Yan asked. Can you bring me along? Xiao Ju was silent for a moment. She said, It's not convenient. He Yan hesitated for a moment. He walked over and whispered, Are you going to look for Chai Anqi's whereabouts? Qi Wu was stunned when he heard this. He didn't expect Xiao Ju to tell He Yan about this. Yes. It will be suspicious if I bring you along. He Yan nodded. Okay, then you go. It was rare for her to be so straightforward. She didn't stick to him like a tail. Xiao Ju was surprised for a moment. She looked at her thoughtfully. He Yan turned and walked into the room. If you want to go, go quickly. If I change my mind, you won't be able to get rid of me. Xiao Ju didn't say anything. She led Qi Wu and Fei Nu away. After they left, He Yan finished his breakfast alone. Cui Yuezhi wasn't in the residence. He went to train the soldiers early in the morning. He Yan went to the next room to look for Lin Shuanghe. He didn't find him. Lin Shuanghe's servant smiled and said, "Housekeeper Lin went out early in the morning. He said he was going to buy some things and will be back later." He Yan thought for a moment and understood. Lin Shuanghe wasn't a real housekeeper. He had been around Xiaoju for the past few days, so he was probably tired of her. It was rare for Xiaoju to go out today. He had some free time, so he naturally went out to play for the whole day. However, this person was too unkind. He didn't call her along when he went out. He was probably afraid that she would complain to Xiaoju. However, Lin Shuanghe's actions were exactly what He Yan wanted. She had been in Jiang City for a few days, but because she was now, Wen Yuyan, she was always with Xiaoju. She didn't have any extra time to inquire about Lu Buwang's whereabouts. Today, Xiaoju and Lin Shuanghe weren't here, so she could act alone. When Lu Buwang parted with her, he had said that if she had the chance to pass by Jiang City in the future, there was a tea house at the foot of the Lian Mountains outside Jiang City. If she wanted to find him, she could go to the tea house to inquire. She might have a chance to meet him again. He Yan put on her outer clothes and packed her things. Seeing this, Cui Jiao asked, "Madam, are you going out? Young master and the housekeeper aren't here today. I don't know anyone in the residence, so it's quite boring. Let's go out and take a look. The weather is very good these days. Why don't we go for a walk in the mountains outside Jiang City?" The two maidservants looked at each other. Why would she want to go for a walk in the mountains? It's settled then, He Yan said. After thinking for a while, she put the 9-section whip that could be stretched into several pieces in her arms, turned around, and walked out of the door. Let's go. Without Xiaoju, He Yan was free and unrestrained. She was a guest of the Cui family, so no one in the Cui family dared to stop her. Zhong Fu was worried about her going out alone, so he wanted her to take 2 guards from the Cui family with her, but He Yan refused. "I'm just going to walk around nearby. I won't go far. Moreover, it's broad daylight and there are many people here. There shouldn't be anyone who dares to steal. Housekeeper Zhong can rest assured. I'll go find my husband after a while. The 2 guards by my husband's side are skilled in martial arts, so they should be enough." Only then did Zhong Fu reluctantly agree. After leaving the Cui family, He Yan asked Cui Jiao to hire a carriage not far from the residence. She asked the coachman to head out of the city. Heng Qiao carefully asked, "Madam, are we really going out of the city?" "We're not going out of the city. We're going to take a look at Qian Mountain outside the city." He Yan said, "When I came here, I passed by Qian Mountain. I saw the beautiful scenery on the mountain and yearned for it. Since I'm free today, it's just right to go now." She spoke as if she was telling the truth. The 2 maidservants did not doubt her. When they arrived at the city gate, He Yan showed the token that Cui Yuji gave her to the city gate guards. When the city gate guards saw that she was someone from the Cui family, they easily let her go. He Yan was allowed to leave the city. Qian Mountain was just outside the city gate. It was not difficult to walk. When they reached the foot of the mountain, He Yan pretended to say, "I'm a bit thirsty. Why don't we look for a tea house nearby and rest for a while before going?" Cui Jiao and Heng Qiao naturally would not say no. Heng Qiao got off the carriage and said, "Madam, rest in the carriage first. This servant will go down and take a look." Not long after, Heng Qiao came back and said with a smile, "There's a tea house nearby. It's not far away. Madam, this servant will help you down. Let's walk there directly." He Yan readily agreed. Not long after they walked, they saw a tea house under a locust tree at the foot of the mountain. There were 2 or 3 customers drinking tea and chatting. He Yan went up and asked for a few cups of tea and a little bit of tea. She let Cui Jiao and Heng Qiao moisten their throats with the coachman. "Madam, this servant is not thirsty." "This servant is not thirsty either. It's such a long journey. How can you not be thirsty? He Yen said, drink. I'll ask the shopkeeper if there's anything fun around here. Without waiting for the two to answer, He Yen walked straight ahead. The owners of the tea house were a middle-aged couple. Their heads were wrapped with a green cloth and their skin was dark. Probably because of the heat, it was a little red. When the aunt saw He Yen, she asked, Miss, are the tea and snacks not to your taste? He Yen said with a smile, No, I'm here to ask you about someone. Ask about someone? The shopkeeper put the handkerchief in his hand on his shoulder. Miss, who do you want to ask about? His name is Lu Buwang, He Yen gestured. He's a head taller than me. He's quite good-looking. He's about 40 years old. He carries a zither and a sword. He likes to wear white clothes like a swordsman. After a pause, she added, he doesn't necessarily wear white clothes. In short, he's an extremely elegant man. After all, she hadn't seen Lu Buwang for many years. Perhaps the current Lu Buwang didn't like to wear white clothes anymore. The aunt thought for a moment and smiled, saying, Miss, the person you're talking about is layperson Yunlin, right? Layperson Yunlin? Yes, we don't know his name. However, a few days after the Water God Festival every year, he'll appear in our tea house and ask us for a cup of tea. As for layperson Yunlin, we just heard others call him that, so we called him that. We don't know his name either. However, according to what you said, the person who wears white clothes, is very elegant, is good-looking, and carries a zither should be this person. He Yen was delighted and only asked, Then do you know where he is now? Miss, you're making things difficult for us, the shopkeeper said. In this place, we don't ask people where they came from. Naturally, we don't know where he is now, but don't be discouraged. He comes here every year after the Water God Festival. I think he should be in Jiang City now to catch up with the Water God Festival during the spring equinox. He Yen looked troubled. Jiang City wasn't small. If she borrowed Cui Yueji's men, it might not be difficult to find Lu Buwang. Unfortunately, this matter couldn't be known to others. Naturally, she could only look for him alone. It wouldn't be easy. Seeing her strange expression, the aunt asked, Miss, who is he to you? Why are you looking for him? He's an old friend that I haven't seen for a long time. He Yen smiled bitterly. After a moment, she said, if that layperson Yunlin comes here to drink tea again after the Water God Festival this year, I'll have to trouble the shopkeeper to help me pass a message to him. Tell him that he is now in Jiang City. Please don't leave and wait to meet him here. Okay. The shopkeeper said with a smile, I'll definitely bring it to him. Only then did He Yen feel relieved. She returned to her seat in the tea house and sat down. Cui Jiao and Hung Qiao said, Madam, the tea is cold. It won't taste good if it's cold, so I won't drink it, He Yen said. To be honest, with the lesson from her previous life, she really didn't dare to drink tea casually from outside. The two maidservants looked at each other. After a while, Hung Qiao asked, Madam, have you thought about where to go? I just asked the shopkeeper. He said that there are wolves on the mountain these few days, so it's best not to go up the mountain. He Yen lied without changing her expression. I thought about it and felt that it's too dangerous for weak women like us. Therefore, we won't go up the mountain today. Let's go straight back to the residence. The coachman was speechless. He wanted to say something but hesitated. In the end, he didn't say anything. How could she go out for a walk and then go back without doing anything? Wasn't she just playing with people? The Madam of Hu province couldn't be offended. She was clearly arrogant because she was pampered. She was too much. On the other side, Xiao Ju and the other two found the location of Cuewei Pavilion. Lei Ho said that the person who contacted him by letter was in Jiang's Cuewei Pavilion. Xiao Ju suspected that this person was Chai Anshi. However, the shop in front of her had become a piece of charred wood. When she smelled it carefully, she could still smell the burnt smell. This Tsuewe Pavilion was originally a shop that sold jewelry. The scout who replied cupped his hands and said, "Half a month ago, a fire broke out one night and burned Tsuewe Pavilion to the ground. The shop assistants, shopkeeper, and the new accountant, Mr. Chai, didn't run out. The person was gone, and the clues were cut off." "Are there any bones?" Xiao Ju asked. "They've all been burned to ashes." "How could there be any bones?" The neighbors all said that it was very tragic. "This Tsuewe Pavilion has always been here. The government said that this place will be renovated in a few days, but the surrounding shops are all closed because they think it's unlucky." Chi Wu threw the silver ingot to the scout, who kept it. He cupped his hands and disappeared into the crowd. Xiao Ju looked at his back and said after a while, "He escaped. It didn't burn earlier or later. It just had to burn half a month ago." Obviously, Lei Ho's capture was exposed, so the other party escaped. "Do we still need to investigate?" "Young master," Fei Nu asked, "now that the clues are cut off." "There's no need to investigate." Xiao Ju turned around. The two of them were stunned. Since the other party knows that they've been exposed, they must be hiding in the dark and waiting for an opportunity to make a move. The enemy is in the dark, and so am I. Therefore, we don't have to do anything. "Just wait," he said. "You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.